During my vasectomy procedure, I overheard my surgeon talking to a nurse. "I need you to give his wife this envelope. Do not let him see it." My blood ran cold. I pretended to still be under heavy sedation. When I finally opened that envelope in the safety of my locked bathroom, my heart stopped. It was not a medical bill, and it was not a prescription. It was my death warrant signed by the people I loved most. My name is Isaiah Thorne. I am 75 years old, and I built half the skyline of this city with my own 2 hands. But to my family, I am just an old man standing in the way of a fortune. If you have ever been underestimated by the people you raised or the people you married, hit that like button and subscribe. Let me tell you how I declared war on my own family. The operating room was freezing. That is the first thing you notice when you are lying on a table in a paper gown. The cold seeps into your bones and makes you feel small. I was supposed to be under local anesthesia with a mild sedative to keep me calm. I have always had a high tolerance for drugs. It comes from growing up in the neighborhoods I did where you had to be tough to survive, and from years of dealing with construction site accidents. The sedative made my body heavy, but my mind was sharp. It was a razor blade in a bowl of oatmeal. I kept my eyes closed, breathing in a slow, rhythmic pattern, just like I do when I am pretending to sleep through my wife Corinne's lectures. Dr. Vance was humming. He was an arrogant man with soft hands, the kind of hands that have never held a shovel or laid a brick. He was Corinne's personal physician. She swore by him. She said he was a genius. To me, he looked like a man who spent more time on his hair than his medical journals. I felt the pressure down there, but no pain. The procedure was almost done. That was when the humming stopped. Tasha. Vance's voice was low, a conspiratorial whisper that cut through the beep of the heart monitor. "Yes, doctor." The nurse sounded nervous. I could hear the rustle of paper. "When we are done here, I need you to give this envelope to Corinne directly. Put it in her hands. Under no circumstances is Isaiah to see it. Do you understand?" There was a pause. I focused on keeping my breathing steady, even though my heart wanted to hammer against my ribs. "Doctor, are you sure about this?" Tasha asked. Her voice trembled. "This feels wrong. Do not think, Tasha. Just do. Unless you want the medical board to hear about that little mistake with the dosage last month. Blackmail. Plain and simple." I heard Tasha swallow hard. "Yes, doctor. I will give it to her." "Good. Now clean him up. He will be groggy for another 20 minutes. The old fool won't know what day it is, let alone what we are doing." Footsteps receded. The metal tray clattered. I cracked my right eye open just a sliver. A narrow slit of blurred vision. Tasha had her back to me, organizing instruments. Vance had stepped out to scrub down. The envelope was sitting on the silver tray right next to my discharge instructions. It was a thick manila envelope sealed tight. My arm felt like it weighed 500 pounds. The sedative was fighting me, trying to drag me down into the darkness. I bit the inside of my cheek hard enough to taste copper. The pain sharpened my focus. I had 5 seconds, maybe 10. I reached out. My hand shook like a leaf in a hurricane. I grabbed the manila envelope. It felt heavy. I shoved it under my hip, sliding it deep into the pocket of the hospital gown they had put on me. Then with the same trembling hand, I grabbed a stack of generic post-operative brochures from the side table and slapped them onto the silver tray where the envelope had been. It was a clumsy switch. If Tasha turned around right then, it would be over. I pulled my arm back to my side and let my body go limp just as Tasha turned back around. She picked up the brochures on the tray without looking closely. She folded them and put them in her pocket, thinking it was the envelope Vance gave her. She was too scared, too rattled by Vance's threat to check. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. Why was I here? Why was a 75-year-old man getting a vasectomy? Corinne, my beautiful wife. 50 years old and obsessed with youth and energy. She had been nagging me for months. She said it was for my health. She said her spiritual healer told her that my energy was blocked and that at my age, fertility was a drain on my life force. It sounded like absolute nonsense. I knew it was nonsense. But Corinne could be relentless. She would nag and pout and withhold affection until the house felt like a war zone. I finally agreed just to shut her up. I thought it was just another one of her eccentricities, like the crystals she put under our mattress or the weird kale shakes she forced me to drink. I thought I was buying peace. I thought I was being a good husband, indulging his younger wife. I was a fool. I was not buying peace. I was walking into a slaughterhouse. Mr. Thorne, can you hear me?" It was Tasha. She was tapping my shoulder. I groaned, playing the part. I let my head roll to the side and blinked my eyes open, trying to look confused. "Is it over?" I slurred my words intentionally. Yes, sir. Everything went perfectly. Your wife is waiting in the recovery suite. I will wheel you out. She avoided my eyes. She looked guilty. Good. Guilt makes people sloppy. She wheeled me into the recovery room. Corinne was there sitting in a chair scrolling through her phone. She was wearing a red dress that cost more than my first house. When she saw me, she put the phone away and put on that dazzling smile, the one that used to make my knees weak but now just made me tired. Oh, my poor brave soldier. She cooed, coming over to kiss my forehead. Her perfume was overpowering. Did everything go well? She was not asking me. She was looking at the nurse. Tasha nodded stiffly. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the folded brochures I had swapped. She handed them to Corinne. Dr. Vance wanted you to have these immediately, Mrs. Thorne. Instructions for his recovery. Very important. Corinne's eyes lit up. She snatched the papers with a greed that she could not hide. She did not open them. She just clutched them to her chest like a winning lottery ticket. Thank you, Tasha. Thank you so much. We will take it from here. I lay there watching this performance. My hand was resting on my hip, feeling the crinkle of the real envelope hidden beneath the fabric. Let's go home, darling, Corinne said, patting my hand. Zora is bringing the car around. You need to rest. Zora. My daughter. Not by blood, but by law. I adopted her when she was 5 years old after I married Corin. I gave her my name. I paid for her private schools, her horses, her failures. I loved her like she was my own flesh. But lately Zora looked at me with the same cold calculation as her mother. The ride home was quiet. Zora drove the Range Rover with aggressive speed. Corinne sat in the passenger seat clutching her purse where she had stashed the decoy papers. I sat in the back staring out the window at the city I helped build. We passed the Thorne Tower on 5th Street, 30 stories of steel and glass. I remembered laying the foundation for that building in '92. I remembered the mud on my boots and the ache in my back. I remembered the pride. Do these women know who I am? The thought simmered in my brain. Do they think because I walk a little slower now, and because I let them spend my money, that I have gone soft? Do they think the concrete in my veins has turned to water? We pulled into the driveway of the estate. It was a sprawling mansion in the hills, too big for 3 people, too quiet. I need to lie down, I said as Zora helped me out of the car. I feigned a stumble, leaning heavily on her. Watch it, Dad. You are heavy. Zora snapped, then caught herself. I mean, be careful. We do not want you falling. She did not care if I fell. She just did not want me to fall before I signed whatever checks they needed this week. I made my way up the grand staircase. My groin ached, a dull, throbbing reminder of the violation I had just endured, but the adrenaline was masking most of it. I went straight to the master bedroom. Corinne was downstairs, probably pouring herself a drink to celebrate her victory. She thought she had the document. She thought she had won. I went into the bathroom and locked the door. I turned on the faucet in the sink just in case anyone was listening. My hands were shaking as I reached into the pocket of the hospital gown I had worn home under my coat. I pulled out the manila envelope. It was thick, official. I tore the seal. I pulled out the documents. I expected a diagnosis of cancer. I expected maybe a positive test for some disease they had planted on me. I did not expect this. It was a legal document, a certificate of mental incapacity. I read the words and my breath hitched in my throat. Patient Isaiah Thorne. Diagnosis advanced Alzheimer's disease. Prognosis rapid deterioration. Patient is heavily confused, aggressive, and unable to manage personal or financial affairs. Immediate custodial care is recommended. It was dated today. It was signed by Dr. Vance. And attached to it was a petition for emergency conservatorship granting full legal and financial control of the Thorne estate to Corinne Thorne. They were not trying to kill me physically. Not yet. They were trying to kill me legally. They were trying to erase me. Advanced Alzheimer's. I looked at myself in the mirror. I saw the gray hair, the wrinkles, the tired eyes. But I saw the eyes of a man who could still calculate the load-bearing capacity of a steel beam in his head. I remembered the price of lumber in 1985. I remembered every birthday, every anniversary, every lie they had ever told me. I did not have Alzheimer's, but if this document was filed with the courts tomorrow, I would be a ghost. They would lock me away in some facility, drugged to the gills, while they picked the flesh from my bones. This was why Corinne wanted the vasectomy. It was never about health. It was about getting me into that room alone with Vance. It was about creating a paper trail of medical visits. It was about sedating me so I would be pliable. If I had not swapped those envelopes, Corinne would be downstairs right now calling her lawyers. But she had brochures about ice packs and supportive underwear. I had the proof of their treason. I sat on the edge of the marble bathtub. The cold seeped through the gown. I thought about Zora. Did she know? She had to. She drove the car. She watched me stumble. I thought about Brad, my son-in-law, that useless leech who married Zora last year. He was always whispering with Corinne. They were all in on it. A deep, terrible sorrow washed over me. I had worked 75 years to build a legacy. I wanted to leave something behind. I wanted to take care of them, and this was my reward. A cage. I looked at the document again. Vance's signature was a scrawl of arrogance. He thought he was untouchable. He thought I was just a dumb old bricklayer who got lucky. I folded the papers carefully. I did not tear them up. Oh no, you do not destroy evidence. You weaponize it. I hid the envelope behind the loose tile under the sink, the one I used to hide my emergency cash in back when I still didn't trust banks. I pushed the tile back into place. I turned off the faucet. I looked in the mirror one last time. The sad old man was gone. In his place was a warlord. I unlocked the door and stepped out into the bedroom. I needed to go downstairs. I needed to eat dinner with them. I needed to look into their eyes and smile while they plotted my demise. I would have to be the best actor in the world. I would have to play the part they wrote for me. I would be the confused, stumbling old fool. Because if they knew I had the envelope, they would not bother with courts. They would just push me down the stairs. I put on my robe. I shuffled towards the door, dragging my feet. Showtime, Isaiah. I walked out onto the landing. I could hear them downstairs. Clinking glasses. Laughter. He is totally out of it, I heard Zora say. It is done, Corinne said. Her voice was full of triumph. By next week we will have the keys to the kingdom. I gripped the banister. Not if I burn the kingdom down first. I walked out of the bedroom and the hallway felt like a tunnel closing in on me. My legs felt heavy, not from the sedation, but from the weight of the secret I was carrying in my pocket. I shuffled my feet on the hardwood floor, intentionally making a scraping sound. The old Isaiah would have walked with the silent grace of a hunter, but tonight I had to be the prey. I had to be the wounded animal they expected to see. The smell of roast lamb drifted up from the dining room. It was my favorite meal. Or at least it was the meal Corinne always ordered the chef to make when she wanted something from me. The scent made my stomach turn. It smelled like bribery. It smelled like a trap. I reached the bottom of the stairs and gripped the banister with a shaking hand. I paused to look at them before they saw me. They were sitting around the long mahogany table, my table, the table I had commissioned from a craftsman in Georgia 20 years ago. Corinne sat at the head of the table where I used to sit. She was sipping wine, her eyes darting between her daughter and her son-in-law. Zora was scrolling on her phone, her face illuminated by the blue light, bored and detached. Brad was leaning back in his chair, picking his teeth with a silver toothpick, looking like a man who had already won the lottery. They looked like vultures waiting for the carcass to stop twitching. I took a deep breath and stepped into the light. There he is, Brad announced, his voice booming and fake. The man of the hour. Look at him, Zora. Your dad is a trooper. Zora barely looked up. Hey, Dad, you look tired. I am tired. I mumbled, slurring my words slightly. I let my shoulders slump. I walked to the side of the table and pulled out my chair. It scraped loudly against the floor. Corinne was watching me like a hawk. Her eyes were not on my face. They were scanning my hands, my pockets, my posture. She was looking for the envelope. She needed to know if the transfer had happened. She needed to know if Tasha had done her job. Sit down, darling, Corinne said, her voice tight. How are you feeling? Confused, I said. My head feels like it is full of cotton. The doctor gave me something strong. Good. That is good. You need to rest. Corinne licked her lips. She leaned forward. Isaiah, did Dr. Vance give you anything before you left? Any paperwork? Here it was. The test. I blinked slowly, trying to look like my brain was misfiring. Paperwork. I do not know. He gave me some papers. Where are they, Isaiah? Corinne's voice sharpened. It lost its sweetness for a second. I patted my empty pockets. I frowned. I think I left them. Or maybe I threw them away. I saw a trash can in the hallway. I think I dropped them there. They were just boring instructions, right? Ice packs and pills. I do not need to read that. I watched the tension drain out of her body. It was physical. Her shoulders dropped. She exhaled a long breath. She exchanged a quick look with Brad, a look of pure relief. They thought the real medical report, the one proving I was sane, was rotting in a hospital trash can. They thought they were safe. "Oh, Isaiah." Corinne laughed, a nervous tittering sound. "You are so forgetful lately, but do not worry, I have a copy. Tasha gave me a copy. We will take care of everything. We always do," Brad added. He reached for the wine bottle. It was a vintage Cabernet, a bottle from my private cellar that I had been saving for a special occasion. Apparently my vasectomy was special enough for them to raid my collection. Brad stood up and poured a generous amount of the dark red liquid into my crystal glass. "Drink up, Pop," Brad said, grinning. "It will help you relax. It is good for the blood, good for the memory, too." I stared at the glass. The liquid shimmered under the chandelier. Brad knew. Zora knew. Corinne definitely knew. I have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. My liver is sensitive. My doctors had told me explicitly, strictly, that alcohol was poison to me. Even a glass or two could trigger inflammation or worse, interfere with the heavy medication I was supposedly on. Brad was not offering me a drink. He was handing me a loaded gun and asking me to pull the trigger. I looked up at him. He was smiling, but his eyes were cold. He wanted me sick. He wanted me weak. If my liver failed, it would just speed up the process. It would make the dementia diagnosis even more believable. Look at the old man drinking himself to death. He does not even remember he is sick. "Thank you, son," I said, my voice cracking. "You are always looking out for me." I picked up the glass. My hand trembled. I brought it to my lips. The smell of the wine was rich and oaky. I wanted to throw it in his face. I wanted to smash the glass over his head and tell him to get out of my house. But I could not. Not yet. I pretended to take a sip. I let the liquid touch my lips, but I did not swallow. I lowered the glass. "Delicious," I lied. "Eat, Dad," Zora said, pushing a plate of lamb towards me. "You are staring into space again. It is creeping me out." "I am sorry, sweetie," I said. I forget where I am sometimes." Corinne reached out and squeezed my hand. Her palms were sweaty. "Do not worry, darling. That is why we are here, to do the thinking for you. Next week, we are going to make some changes, just to make your life easier. Changes. I knew what that meant. The court order, the facility. I picked at my food. I watched them eat. They ate with gusto. They devoured the lamb, the potatoes, the expensive vegetables. They ate like they owned the table, the food, the silver forks. Brad was talking about an investment opportunity. Cryptocurrency. He was using big words, trying to sound smart for Zora. "It is a sure thing, babe," he said, chewing with his mouth open. "I just need a little capital to get in on the ground floor. Once your dad signs those papers next week, we are going to the moon." Zora rolled her eyes, but she smiled. "Just make sure you buy me that G-Wagon you promised." I gripped my fork until my knuckles turned white under the table. They were carving up my empire before my body was even cold. They were spending money I had bled for on toys and gambling. I needed to get rid of the wine. I could not leave it in the glass. If they saw I had not touched it, they would get suspicious. I waited for the right moment. Brad was pouring himself another glass, laughing at his own joke. Corinne was busy texting someone under the table, probably Vance. I knocked my fork off the table. "Whoops," I muttered. "Clumsy me." I bent down to pick it up. In one fluid motion, I tipped the contents of my wine glass into the potted fern that stood next to my chair. The dark liquid disappeared into the soil. I sat back up, holding the fork. I put the empty glass back on the table. "I finished it," I said, pointing to the glass. "It was good." "Can I have more?" Brad looked at the empty glass. He looked surprised, then pleased. "Whoa, slow down, Pop." He chuckled. "Do not want you partying too hard. Maybe later." He thought I was drinking myself into a stupor. He thought he was winning. The dinner dragged on. I played my part. I asked the same question 3 times. I called Brad by the wrong name. I saw the looks of pity and annoyance they exchanged. They were disgusted by me. Good. Disgust makes people arrogant. Finally, I pushed my chair back. "I am tired," I said. "I want to go to bed." "Go ahead, Isaiah," Corinne said, not even looking up from her phone. "We will clean up." I shuffled out of the room. I climbed the stairs slowly, stopping to catch my breath. I wanted them to hear my heavy footsteps. I wanted them to think the old man was down for the count. I went into the bedroom and turned off the lights. But I did not get into bed. I sat in the dark by the window. My heart was racing again. The adrenaline was the only thing keeping me going. Downstairs, I heard the front door open and close. Zora must have left, probably going to meet her friends to brag about her upcoming inheritance. Then, silence. I waited. 10 minutes. 20. I heard the sliding glass door of the study open downstairs. It was directly below my bedroom balcony. The acoustics of this house were one of the things I loved about it. I built it that way. Sound carried if you knew where to listen. I opened my window quietly, just a crack. The night air was cool. I heard the flicker of a lighter, then the smell of cigar smoke drifted up. Brad. He was smoking my Cuban cigars, the ones I kept in the humidor for my birthday. Then I heard him dialing a number. Pick up, he muttered. Yeah, it is me. Brad's voice changed. It became whiny, desperate. Listen, Tony, I know I missed the payment, but you have to listen to me. It is happening. Pause. No, I am serious this time. The old man is cooked. We had dinner tonight. He is completely gone. He drank a glass of wine and did not even remember he is not allowed to drink. He forgot where he put his medical papers. His brain is mush, Tony. I clenched my fists in the dark. Yeah, next week. Corinne has the doctor in her pocket. We are filing for emergency guardianship on Monday. The judge will rubber stamp it. He is a vegetable, Tony. As soon as I get power of attorney, I will transfer the funds. Pause. Double. I will pay you double. Just keep your guys away from me for another week. Do not hurt me, Tony. I swear on my life. The old man is signing over everything. He is basically dead already. I stepped back from the window. Dead already. Brad owed money. Serious money to serious people. That was why he was so desperate. That was why he was pushing Corinne. He was not just greedy. He was scared. I looked at the empty bed. I looked at the photos on the dresser. Me and Corinne in Paris. Me and Zora at her graduation. It was all a lie. A beautiful, expensive lie. I walked to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I looked at my reflection. They think I am a vegetable. They think I am mush. I dried my face. Brad was going to pay Tony double. And he was going to use my money to do it. Over my dead body. I went to the closet and pulled out a small burner phone I had kept hidden in an old shoebox since my construction days. You never know when you need to make a call that cannot be traced. I sat on the edge of the bed and dialed a number I had not called in 10 years. It rang 4 times. Yeah. A gruff voice answered. Frank, it is Isaiah. There was a silence on the line, then a low chuckle. The ghost of 5th Street. I thought you retired, Isaiah. I thought you were living the soft life. I was frank. But the soft life is trying to kill me. What do you need? I need eyes on someone. A kid named Brad, my son-in-law. He is in deep with a guy named Tony. Tony the butcher. You have got family problems, Isaiah. I know. I need you to find out exactly how much he owes. And Frank. Yeah. I need you to find out where he banks, where he hides his dirt. I am going to buy his debt, Frank. You want to pay off his loan. Number 1. I said, my voice cold as the grave. I do not want to pay it off. I want to own it. I want to become the guy he owes. I hung up the phone. Downstairs, I heard Brad come back inside. He was humming. He thought he was safe. He had no idea that he had just sold his soul to the devil, and the devil was sleeping upstairs in the master bedroom. The next morning, the sun hit the marble floors of the foyer with a brightness that felt mocking. I sat in my favorite armchair, pretending to struggle with the buttons on my cardigan. I knew Zora would be coming down the stairs any minute. She had a Pilates class at 10, and she never missed it. I needed to get her alone. I needed to know if the daughter I raised was just a pawn in her mother's game or a willing general in the war against me. When she appeared, she was wearing designer workout gear that probably cost more than the first car I ever bought. She was typing furiously on her phone, her thumbs moving like lightning. She did not even look up as she walked past me. Zora, I called out, making my voice sound thin and reedy. She stopped and sighed, a heavy, dramatic sigh that spoke volumes. What is it, Dad? I am running late. I need a favor, sweetie. I need to go to the bank. The bank? She turned around then. Her eyes narrowed. Why do you need to go to the bank? Mom handles the accounts now, remember? I know, I stammered. But I have a safe deposit box. I need to check on... Some old bonds. I think they matured. It might be a significant amount. I threw the bait out and watched her snatch it from the air. The mention of money changed her entire posture. The annoyance evaporated, replaced by a shark-like interest. Bonds, she asked, stepping closer. How much are we talking about? I scratched my head, feigning confusion. I do not know. 50,000, maybe 100. I just want to see if they are still there. My memory, you know. Zora checked her watch. Pilates was forgotten. Okay, Dad, I will take you. But we have to be quick. The ride to the bank was a masterclass in anxiety. Zora drove her white Porsche like she owned the road, weaving in and out of traffic while texting with one hand. I gripped the door handle, my knuckles turning white. I looked at her profile. The sharp nose, the determined set of her jaw. I remembered the day I met her. She was 5 years old, hiding behind Corinne's legs in a floral dress that was 2 sizes too big. Her biological father had left them before she could walk. Corinne told me he was a deadbeat, a ghost. I remembered lifting Zora up that first day. She was so light. She wrapped her tiny arms around my neck and whispered, "Are you my new daddy?" I promised her then and there that I would protect her. I promised I would give her the world. And I did. I gave her my name. I paid for the braces, the ballet lessons, the Ivy League education. I wiped her tears when her high school boyfriend cheated on her. I walked her down the aisle to marry Brad even though I knew he was a mistake. I loved her more than I loved myself. And now, she was driving me to the bank, hoping to loot the last of my treasures before they locked me away. We pulled up to the bank downtown. It was a fortress of stone and glass, one of the oldest in the city. I had accounts here before Zora was born. Inside, the air conditioning was frigid. I leaned heavily on my cane, letting Zora guide me to the teller window. The teller was a young man I did not recognize. Good. That made it easier. "Can I help you, sir?" the teller asked. "I need to access my box," I mumbled. "And I need to check the balance on the savings. The big one." I fumbled with my wallet. My hands were shaking, partly from age, partly from the rage simmering in my gut. I pulled out my debit card and dropped it. Zora snatched it off the counter before it stopped spinning. "Jesus, Dad, you are a mess," she hissed. She handed the card to the teller. "He needs to check his balance," she said sharply. The teller inserted the card. "Please enter your PIN, sir." I stared at the keypad. I knew the number. I had used the same PIN for 40 years. It was the date I laid the first brick of my first company. But I stood there, mouth slightly open, finger hovering over the wrong keys. I cannot remember," I whispered. "Is it 1, 2? Zora groaned. She nudged me aside with her hip. "Move over. You told me it last week. Do you not remember anything?" She punched the numbers in. Rapid fire, 4 digits. She knew my PIN. She knew it by heart. How many times had she used this card without me knowing? How many times had she slipped it out of my wallet while I slept? The teller pulled up the account. Zora leaned over the counter, her eyes scanning the screen. I saw her pupils dilate. The balance on that account was substantial. It was my operational fund. Liquid cash. She licked her lips. "Is that correct?" she asked, her voice breathless. "Yes, ma'am," the teller said. "Would you like a receipt?" "No," I said quickly. Just the box." Zora stepped back, looking at me with a new expression. It was not love. It was calculation. She was doing the math in her head, figuring out how fast she and Brad could burn through that money once I was declared incompetent. We went to the vault. I pretended to rummage through an empty box for 5 minutes, muttering about missing papers. "We should go, Dad," Zora said impatiently. "I am hungry." We left the bank. The sun was blinding. "Can we stop for coffee?" I asked. "I need to sit down. My legs are tired." Zora sighed, but she was in a good mood now. The sight of all those zeros had intoxicated her. "Fine. There is a place around the corner, but just a quick one." We sat at a small table in the back of the coffee shop. I ordered a black coffee. Zora ordered an iced latte with oat milk. She placed her phone on the table face up. It was always there, like a third person in our relationship. "So, Dad," she said, stirring her drink, "about those bonds. We should probably move them into a managed account. Brad knows a guy who can get great returns. I bet he does," I thought. "Maybe," I said. "We can talk about it later." I took a sip of coffee. It was bitter. "I need to use the restroom," Zora said, standing up. "Watch my purse." She left her phone on the table. This was it. I waited until she turned the corner towards the restrooms. I knew I had maybe 2 minutes. Zora was vain she would check her makeup. I reached across the table. My hand was steady now. No tremors. I tapped the screen. It was locked. Face ID. But I knew Zora. I knew she was lazy with security. Her passcode was her birthday. I typed it in. The phone unlocked. My heart hammered against my ribs. I felt like a criminal. I was violating my daughter's privacy, but she had violated my entire life. I opened her recent calls. There were a dozen calls to Brad, a few to Corinne, but the most recent call made 10 minutes ago while I was fumbling with the safe deposit box was to a contact saved as Dad Love with a red heart emoji. I stared at the screen. I am Dad, but my number is saved in her phone as Father. I saw it yesterday. So who was Dad Love? I tapped the information icon next to the name. The number popped up. I recognized it instantly. I have a memory for numbers. It is a builder's trait. Measurements, phone numbers, account codes. I never forget a sequence. It was Dr. Vance's private cell number. The room spun. The noise of the coffee shop faded into a dull roar. Dad Love. Zora called Vance Dad. I scrolled through the text messages. There was a thread with Dad Love. I opened it. The last message sent from Zora, right after we left the teller window, read, "He is loaded, Daddy. The accounts are full. Once we put him away, we are going to be set for life. Love you." And the reply from Vance. "Good girl. Just keep him calm until the hearing. Then we can finally be a real family. No more hiding." I felt like I had been hit in the chest with a sledgehammer. The air left my lungs. Real family. I looked at the dates of the messages. They went back years. Birthday wishes, secret meetups, photos of them together at lunches I was never invited to. I scrolled back to the beginning of the thread, a message from 3 years ago. "Happy birthday, my beautiful daughter. I am so proud of you, my beautiful daughter." The pieces slammed together in my mind, forming a picture so grotesque I wanted to vomit. Corinne and Vance. They did not just start this affair recently. They had been together for decades. Zora was not a stranger's child. She was not the daughter of a deadbeat who ran away. She was Vance's daughter. Corinne had passed her off as another man's child, had let me adopt her, had let me pay for her life, while she and Vance laughed at me from the shadows. I had raised my enemy's child. I had poured my love, my resources, my soul into a girl who called her biological father Dad Love and plotted to put me in a cage. I looked at the coffee cup in front of me. My reflection trembled in the black liquid. I was not just a victim of greed. I was the punchline of a 30-year joke. I heard the click of heels on the tile floor. I quickly closed the messages, locked the phone, and placed it back on the table exactly where she had left it. I picked up my coffee cup and brought it to my lips just as Zora slid back into her seat. She looked refreshed. She smiled at me. A smile I now saw was a carbon copy of Dr. Vance's arrogant smirk. "Ready to go, Dad?" she asked cheerfully. I looked at her. Really looked at her. I saw Vance's nose. I saw his chin. How had I been so blind? Love is not blind. Love is a willfully ignorant fool. "Yes, Zora," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "I am ready. I was ready. I was ready to burn it all down." I stood up, leaning on my cane. "You know, Dad," Zora said as we walked to the car, "you really should let Brad handle those bonds. He is family. He wants what is best for you." Family. I opened the car door. "You are right, sweetie," I said. "Family is everything." I got into the car and closed the door. As we drove away, I looked at the city skyline one more time. I built this town with steel and concrete. I dealt with union bosses, mobsters, and corrupt politicians. I survived them all, and I would survive this. But Zora, Corinne, and Vance, they were not going to survive me. The golf cart bounced over the manicured green hills of the country club. The sun was high and hot, beating down on the white leather seats. Brad was driving. He wore a polo shirt that was too tight across his chest and aviator sunglasses that reflected the perfectly trimmed landscape. He looked like a man who owned the world, but I could smell the fear on him. It smelled like cheap cologne mixed with the sour tang of nervous sweat. "Nice day for it, right, Isaiah?" Brad shouted over the whine of the electric motor. "Nothing like 18 holes to clear the head." I nodded, gripping the safety handle with a hand I deliberately allowed to tremble. "It is beautiful, son," I said, my voice raspy. "I have not been out here in years. Corinne says the sun is bad for my skin." Brad laughed, a short barking sound. "Corinne worries too much. You need fresh air. You need to circulate." We stopped at the fourth hole, a long par 5 with a water hazard on the right. It was a trap for amateur players. Just like this lunch was a trap for me. Brad hopped out and grabbed his driver. He took a few practice swings, slicing the air with aggressive force. He was showing off. He was marking his territory. "So Isaiah," he said, lining up his shot, "I wanted to talk to you, man to man, before the lawyers and the doctors get involved next week." I sat in the cart leaning on my putter. "Here it comes." "What is it, Brad? Is everything okay with Zora?" Brad hit the ball. It soared through the air, hooking slightly left but landing safely on the fairway. He pumped his fist. "Zora is great. We are great. But we are worried about the future. Your future." He put the club back in the bag and leaned against the cart, looking down at me. "You know inflation is killing cash right now. Leaving your money in a savings account is basically setting it on fire. I have been looking at your portfolio. It is outdated." I blinked behind my sunglasses. My portfolio was diversified across real estate, municipal bonds, and blue-chip stocks. It was a fortress. It had survived the crash of '87, the dot-com bubble, and the housing crisis of 2008. "Is it?" I asked innocently. "I thought the bank said I was safe." "Banks are for poor people, Isaiah," Brad scoffed. "Wealthy people leverage. Wealthy people move fast. Look, I have this opportunity. It is exclusive. A private initial coin offering. Cryptocurrency. It is called Safu coin. It is backed by, well, it is complicated tech stuff, but the returns are projected at 10,000% in the first month. 10,000%. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to tell him that the only thing that returns 10,000% is a winning lottery ticket or a kilo of cocaine. I built my fortune on gravel and rebar. I started my first company in a garage with a rusted pickup truck and a shovel. I hauled bags of cement until my shoulders bled. I negotiated contracts with men who would bury you in a foundation if you looked at them wrong. I know the value of $1 because I had to fight for every single one. I know the smell of a hustle. And right now the air smelled like manure. That sounds complicated, I muttered. I do not understand computers, Brad. You do not have to, Brad said, his eyes gleaming. I will handle it for you. I just need the capital. $2 million. $2 million. He said it so casually, like he was asking for $20 for gas. 2 million, I repeated. That is a lot of money, Brad. It is an investment, Pop. Brad said, his voice taking on a desperate edge. Think about Zora. Think about the legacy. If we put 2 million in now, by Christmas it could be 20 million. We could buy an island. We could secure the family for generations. But the window is closing. I need to buy the tokens by 5 p.m. today. He was lying. There was no window closing. There were loan sharks waiting. Tony the butcher was probably texting him right now, asking where his money was. Brad was trying to use my retirement fund to save his kneecaps. I looked out at the water hazard. The surface was calm, hiding the mud and the lost balls beneath. I pretended to think. I rubbed my chin. I let my mouth hang open slightly. Zora really wants this, I asked. She is begging for it, Isaiah. She knows how smart I am with this stuff. She wants us to be safe. He was using my daughter against me. He was using the girl I raised as leverage. It was a low blow, but it was exactly what I expected from a man who wore loafers without socks. Okay, I said softly. Brad froze. Okay. If it is for the family, if it is for Zora. I trust you, Brad. You are a smart boy, much smarter than me. Brad let out a breath that sounded like a tire deflating. He practically vibrated with relief. You are making the right choice, Isaiah. I promise you. You will not regret this. He reached into his golf bag. Of course, he did not have a ball retriever or a towel. He had a checkbook. My checkbook. He must have stolen it from my desk this morning while I was in the bathroom. He pulled it out and handed it to me along with a gold pen. Just make it out to Apex Digital Solutions. That is my holding company. I will transfer it to the exchange from there. Apex Digital Solutions, a shell company, a black hole where my money would vanish forever. I took the checkbook. My hands were shaking. This time I did not have to pretend. I was shaking with rage. I opened it to a fresh page. 2 million. I wrote the date. I wrote the name of his fake company. I wrote the amount in numbers and then in words. 2 million and 0 hundredths. Then I moved the pen to the signature line. This was the kill shot. I have signed my name 1,000,000 times. On payroll checks, on contracts, on steel orders. My signature has evolved over the years. When I started in the 70s, it was a tight, cramped scrawl because I was always in a hurry. In the 90s, it became big and flamboyant as my confidence grew. Now in my 70s, it was small and precise. The bank had my current signature on file. They also had strict instructions. Any check over $10,000 required voice verification and a specific signature match. But Brad did not know that. Brad thought a signature was just ink on paper. I put the pen to the paper. I did not sign Isaiah Thorne the way I do now. I signed it I.D. Thorne. That was how I signed checks in 1982. It was the signature from my first business account, the one that had been closed for 20 years. It looked similar enough to pass a casual glance, but to a bank algorithm or a teller comparing it to my current file, it would be a red flag the size of a billboard. It was a dead signature. A ghost. I finished the loop on the E and lifted the pen. There, I said, handing him the check. Brad snatched it. He stared at the numbers. He did not even look at the signature. He was too busy counting the zeros in his head. He kissed the check. He actually kissed it. You are the man, Isaiah. You are the absolute man. He shoved the check into his pocket like he was afraid I would take it back. Let's finish the round, he said, beaming. I feel a hole in one coming on. We played the rest of the holes. Brad played like a champion, fueled by adrenaline and greed. I played like an old man, dragging my club, hitting the ball into the rough, complaining about my back. Inside, I was calculating. Brad would leave here and go straight to his bank. He would try to deposit the check. It would take 24 hours to clear, but it would not clear. By tomorrow morning, the bank would flag it as a fraudulent signature. They would freeze the transaction, and because of the amount, they would call me. But I was not going to wait for the call. We finished at the 18th hole. Brad bought me a club soda and shook my hand vigorously. I have to run, Pop, he said, checking his watch. Business meetings. You know how it is. Zora will pick you up. I already called her. He left me sitting on the patio of the clubhouse. I watched him run to his car. He looked like a child running to the ice cream truck. As soon as his car disappeared around the bend, I reached into my jacket pocket. I pulled out the burner phone. I dialed a number I knew by heart. Silas, I said. Mr. Thorne. The voice on the other end was crisp, professional. Silas was my former chief of operations. He was retired now, but he still handled my private affairs. He was the only man on earth I trusted with my life. I am at the club. Brad just left. He has a check for $2 million. There was a pause. Did you sign it? I signed it with the 1982 signature. Silas chuckled. A dry sound like dry leaves rubbing together. The I.D. Thorne. He is walking into a wall. Exactly. But I want the wall to have spikes. Call the bank manager, not the branch manager, the regional VP. Tell him a check is coming in with a suspicious signature. Tell him I suspect elder abuse and coercion. Tell him to flag the account of the depositor for attempted fraud. Understood, Silas said. And the police? Not yet, I said, watching a hawk circle over the fairway. I want him to think he has the money. I want him to call his loan sharks and tell them payment is on the way. I want him to feel safe. And then when the check bounces, I want him to be the one explaining to Tony, the butcher, why he lied. That is cold, Isaiah. He tried to put me in a home, Silas. He tried to steal the concrete from under my feet. Cold is the only temperature I have left. Do you want me to pick you up? Number Zora is coming. I have one more performance to give today. I hung up the phone and leaned back in the chair. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the green. I came from the mud. I came from the bottom. These people thought because I wore cardigans and walked with a cane that I had forgotten how to fight. Brad was about to find out that you do not try to hustle a hustler. I took a sip of my club soda. It tasted like victory. The next morning, the kitchen smelled of burnt toast and desperation. I shuffled in, leaning heavily on my cane, my eyes half closed. Corinne was standing at the granite island. She was not eating. She was organizing a row of orange prescription bottles like a general arranging troops. "Good morning, my love," she said. Her voice was too bright, too loud for 8 in the morning. It sounded like tinfoil crinkling. I grunted and pulled out a stool. "Morning. Sit down, Isaiah. We have a new routine starting today. Dr. Vance sent over a special regimen. He says your cognitive decline is accelerating faster than we thought. We need to be aggressive." Aggressive. That was one word for it. She walked over to me holding a small paper cup. Inside were 3 pills. 2 were white and chalky. One was bright blue, a gel cap that looked like candy. "What are these?" I asked, peering into the cup with feigned confusion. "I already take my blood pressure meds. These are not for your blood pressure, Isaiah. These are for your brain. The white ones are high-potency vitamins to stop the shrinkage. And the blue one." She smiled a tight, thin-lipped smile. "That is a mood stabilizer. Dr. Vance says it will help with the aggression and the confusion. It will make you feel floaty. Peaceful. Peaceful. Like a corpse." I looked at her hands. They were perfectly manicured red talons. She was shaking slightly. She was nervous. She knew exactly what she was giving me. "I do not want to take them," I whined, pushing the cup away like a petulant child. "Pills make my stomach hurt. Isaiah," her voice dropped an octave, "do not be difficult. Zora and Brad are counting on us to keep you healthy. If you do not take these, we might have to consider other arrangements, sooner rather than later." The threat hung in the air. The facility. The cage. I looked at the cup. Then I looked at her. I let my lower lip tremble. "Okay, Corinne," I said softly. "I do not want to go away. I will be good." "Good boy," she said. I tipped the cup into my mouth. This is a trick I learned 40 years ago from a union boss who tried to poison me with bad moonshine during a negotiation. You do not swallow. You lift your tongue, creating a pocket in the soft tissue underneath. You slide the object into that pocket, and you hold it there. It takes muscle control. It takes discipline. And it tastes terrible. The pills hit my tongue. The chalky ones started to dissolve, immediately bitter and metallic. The gel cap was slippery. I used my tongue to wedge them deep into the floor of my mouth, pressing them against the gums. I picked up my glass of water and took a big gulp, swallowing the liquid while keeping the pills pinned down. I gulped loudly, making a show of it. I opened my mouth and stuck out my tongue, just like I used to do for my mother when I was 5. "See? Gone." Corinne peered into my mouth. She looked satisfied. "Very good, Isaiah. You will feel better in no time. Now go sit in the sunroom. I have to make some calls." She turned her back. I shuffled out of the kitchen, holding my breath. The bitter taste was spreading. I needed to get them out before they dissolved completely. I walked as fast as my fake limp would allow to the powder room down the hall. I locked the door and spit into a tissue. The white pills were half-melted white sludge mixed with saliva. The blue gel cap was intact but sticky. I wrapped the tissue carefully in a plastic baggie I had stashed in my pocket earlier. I needed to know what they were. I knew they were not vitamins. Vitamins do not make your wife look at you like you are a science experiment she is waiting to fail. I waited an hour. I sat in the sunroom staring at the garden while the chemicals burned a hole in my pocket. Corinne left at 9:30. She said she had a yoga class, but I knew she was going to meet Vance. Zora was still asleep. Brad had left early, probably, to stand outside the bank waiting for it to open so he could cash that bad check. The house was empty. I walked out the back door. I did not take my car. They might be tracking it. I walked through the woods behind my estate, a path I had cleared myself years ago. It led to a service road where I had called a taxi. I directed the driver to an industrial park on the south side of the city. It was a gritty neighborhood of warehouses and auto body shops. This was where the real work happened. I stopped in front of a nondescript brick building. The sign on the door read Miller Chemical Analysis. I rang the buzzer. A moment later, a voice crackled over the intercom. "We are closed for deliveries. It is Isaiah," I said. "Open the door, Elias." The buzzer sounded and the lock clicked. Elias Miller was waiting for me in the hallway. He was a small man with thick glasses and a lab coat stained with reagents. He used to be the chief chemist for my concrete division, ensuring our mixtures were up to code. Now he ran his own private lab testing soil samples and water quality. He was discreet. He was loyal. "Mr. Thorne," he said, his eyes widening as he took in my disheveled appearance. "You look—" "I know how I look, Elias. I look like a man who is being hunted." I followed him into the lab. It smelled of ozone and sulfur. I pulled the plastic baggie out of my pocket and placed it on a stainless steel table. I need you to tell me what these are, I said, and I need to know now. Elias looked at the white sludge and the blue pill. He put on a pair of latex gloves and picked up the blue pill with tweezers. No markings, he muttered. Compounded, not commercial. He scraped a bit of the white sludge onto a slide. Give me 20 minutes, he said. I sat on a stool and watched him work. He moved with precision using mass spectrometers and gas chromatography. I did not understand the science, but I understood the focus. 20 minutes later, Elias turned around. His face was pale. Isaiah, he said quietly. Who gave you these? My doctor, I said. He said they were vitamins for my brain. Elias let out a sharp laugh. Vitamins. Isaiah, this blue pill is a high-dose benzodiazepine, specifically a compound similar to Rohypnol but modified for slower release. It is a tranquilizer, a heavy one, and the white ones. I asked, my stomach tightening. That is the scary part. It is a cocktail of anticholinergics, scopolamine mostly. What does that do, Elias? In plain English, it blocks neurotransmitters associated with learning and memory. In low doses, it is used for motion sickness. In this dose, combined with the benzo, Elias took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. It induces a state of twilight anesthesia. You would be awake, but you would have no ability to form new memories. You would be suggestible, confused, docile. And over time, it would cause permanent cognitive damage. It mimics the symptoms of rapid-onset dementia perfectly. I stared at the white powder. They were literally erasing my mind. They were chemically lobotomizing me so I would sign whatever they put in front of me. But there is more, Elias said, looking at a printout. You have a liver condition, right? Non-alcoholic fatty liver. Yes, I said. This combination is hepatotoxic, extremely so. If you took these every day for a month, your liver would shut down. You would go into hepatic failure. You would turn yellow slip into a coma and die. And because of your history, everyone would just assume your liver finally gave out. It is a perfect murder weapon, Isaiah. Slow, invisible, and inevitable. And I felt a cold rage settle in my chest. It was heavier than the concrete I used to pour. They were not just trying to steal my money. They were trying to kill me, and they were going to make me thank them for it while I drooled on myself. Corinne, my wife, the woman I slept next to. She handed me death in a paper cup and called it love. Can you write this up, I asked. An official report. Elias nodded. Of course. But, Isaiah, if you use this, these are controlled substances. Whoever made these is going to prison for a long time. That is the plan, Elias. That is exactly the plan. He printed the report. I folded it and put it in my inside pocket next to the fake dementia diagnosis. 2 documents, 2 nails in their coffins. I left the lab and took a taxi back to the service road. I walked back through the woods. The birds were singing. The sun was shining. It seemed wrong that the world could be so beautiful when my life was so ugly. I slipped back into the house through the back door. It was quiet. I went into the kitchen and poured a glass of apple juice. I sat at the island exactly where I had been sitting when Corinne tried to poison me. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Silas, my former chief of operations. The check bounced. The bank flagged the signature just like you said. They called Brad into the office. He tried to bluff them, said it was a mistake. They threatened to call the feds. He ran out of there sweating like a pig. I smiled, a grim, humorless smile. Where is he now? I texted back. He is at a pawn shop on 4th, the one run by the Russians. He has the title to the Rolls-Royce. My Rolls-Royce. My Phantom. The only indulgence I ever bought for myself. A masterpiece of engineering. Brad had stolen the title from my safe. He was trying to pawn a $500,000 car for quick cash to pay off Tony. Let him do it. I texted. Let him dig the hole deeper. Just make sure you get the receipt. I want proof he sold a car that does not belong to him. Copy that, Silas replied. By the way, Tony the butcher is looking for him. Word on the street is the deadline was noon today. It was 1 p.m. Brad was a dead man walking, and he did not even know it. I put the phone down. I heard the front door open. It was Corinne. She was humming. She walked into the kitchen swinging her designer bag. She looked happy. She thought I was upstairs floating on a cloud of scopolamine. Oh, Isaiah, she said, startled. I did not expect you to be up. How are you feeling? I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had just tried to kill me. I feel different, I said slowly, letting my eyes unfocus. Float. Like you said, She smiled. A predator looking at a wounded gazelle. That is wonderful, darling. Just wonderful. Why do you not go take a nap? We have a big day tomorrow. I stood up. My legs felt strong. My mind was sharp. Okay, Corinne, I said. I will go take a nap. I walked past her. I could smell her perfume. It smelled like formaldehyde. I went upstairs, but I did not nap. I went to my closet and pulled out my old steel-toed boots. I cleaned them off. Tomorrow was going to be a big day indeed. Tomorrow was the day I started kicking back. I was polishing my boots when I heard the doorbell. It was Zora. She did not use her key, which was strange. She usually barged in like she owned the place, which technically she thought she soon would. I opened the door and she was already crying. Big crocodile tears streaming down her face, ruining her expensive foundation. "Daddy!" she wailed, throwing herself into my arms. "It is terrible. Just terrible." I patted her back, feeling the tension in her designer blazer. "What is it, Zora? What is wrong?" She pulled back, sniffling. "It is Coco. My little Coco. She is sick, Daddy. The vet says she needs surgery immediately. Her kidneys are failing. If I do not pay them $5,000 by tonight, they are going to put her down." Coco was her Pomeranian, a yappy little thing that lived in a purse and ate better than most people. But Zora did not look like a grieving pet owner. She looked like a junkie needing a fix. Her eyes were darting around. Her hands were shaking. 5,000, I repeated. "That is a lot for a dog, Zora. She is not just a dog," she screamed, her voice shrill. "She is my baby. How can you be so heartless? Brad is tapped out, Daddy. We have nothing. You have to help me, please." Brad was tapped out because I had frozen his hustle, and Coco was probably fine, likely getting a pedicure at the groomers. Zora needed $5,000 because Tony the butcher did not take IOUs, and Brad was probably hiding in a dumpster somewhere. She was desperate. She was using a dog to manipulate me. It was low even for her. I sighed, leaning heavily on the doorframe. "I do not have cash, Zora." Corinne took my checkbook. "She says I cannot be trusted with money anymore." Zora's face crumpled. No. There has to be something. Do you have a stash? Some emergency cash? Anything." She was frantic. She started pushing past me, walking into the foyer, her eyes scanning the room like a thief. "Wait," I said slowly, as if a thought was just occurring to me. "I do have something." She spun around. "What? What is it?" I shuffled to the study. She followed on my heels, practically vibrating. I went to the old oak desk and opened the bottom drawer. It was locked, but the key was in the lock. I turned it with a click. I pulled out a velvet box. It was dusty, blue velvet faded with age. "Your mother's jewelry," I said softly. "She left it to me. She said to give it to you on a special occasion, but if Coco is sick, maybe this is the time." Zora's eyes went wide. She knew about this box, or at least she knew the legend of it. My first wife, Sarah, had a collection of diamonds, real diamonds. Flawless stones I bought her when the business first took off. "Is that the necklace?" she whispered, reaching out. I opened the box. Inside, nestled on white satin, lay a diamond necklace, earrings, and a bracelet. They sparkled under the study lights, catching the fire of the sun. They looked magnificent, heavy, expensive. "Yes," I said, "it is the set." It was appraised at $50,000 back in '95. It must be worth double that now. Zora's hand shot out and snatched the box from my grip. She did not even say thank you. She just stared at the stones, hunger radiating off her like heat. "I can sell this," she muttered to herself. "I can get cash today." "Zora, wait," I said, grabbing her arm feebly. "You cannot just sell it. It is a family heirloom. Maybe we can pawn it just until—" "No time, Dad," she snapped, pulling away. "Coco needs surgery now. I will buy it back later. I promise." She was already moving towards the door, clutching the box to her chest. "Love you, Dad. You are a lifesaver." She ran out of the house. She did not look back. She did not ask how I was. She just took the diamonds and ran. I watched her go. I waited until her car disappeared down the driveway. Then I walked back into the study and sat in my leather chair. I picked up the remote for the security system and switched the feed to the monitor on my desk. I had installed cameras everywhere years ago, not just in my house. I owned several commercial properties in the city. One of them was a high-end pawn shop on 4th Street. The same one Silas had told me Brad visited yesterday. It was run by an old associate of mine, a Russian named Yuri. Yuri owed me a favor. Actually, he owed me his life, but that is a story for another time. I picked up the burner phone. Yuri, it is Isaiah. Mr. Thorne. A pleasure. How is retirement treating you? It is boring, Yuri. So I am creating some entertainment. My daughter is coming to see you. She has a box of diamonds. Ah, she wants to sell. Yes. She thinks they are the real deal. The ones Sarah wore to the Met Gala in '98. And they are not. No, Yuri. They are paste. Cubic zirconia. High-quality glass I bought at a flea market in Miami for $200. I keep the real ones in a vault in Switzerland. Yuri laughed. A deep belly laugh. You are a wicked man, Isaiah. What do you want me to do? Humiliate her, Yuri. Offer her $20. Tell her she is trying to scam you. Make her feel like the cheap fraud she is. And Yuri, make sure the cameras are rolling with audio. Consider it done, my friend. I hung up and watched the screen. 30 minutes later, Zora burst into Yuri's shop. I watched on the monitor as she marched up to the counter, slamming the velvet box down. She looked imperious, demanding. She pointed at the box, then at Yuri. I could not hear them yet, but I could see her mouth moving fast. Yuri opened the box. He put on his loupe, that little magnifying glass jewelers use. He inspected the necklace. He took his time. He held it up to the light. He rubbed it with a cloth. Zora was tapping her foot, checking her watch. She was nervous. Then Yuri put the necklace down. He took off his loupe. He said something. He gestured to the door. Zora froze. She shook her head. She pointed at the box again, screaming now. She grabbed the necklace and thrust it in his face. Yuri laughed. He picked up the necklace and tossed it back into the box like it was trash. He pulled a $20 bill from his pocket and slapped it on the counter. Zora went ballistic. She swept the box off the counter. The fake diamonds scattered across the floor. She was screaming, pointing at Yuri, then at the camera she did not know was watching her. Yuri just crossed his arms and smiled. He pointed to the door again. Zora scrambled on the floor, picking up the fake jewels, shoving them into her purse. She was crying now. Ugly, desperate tears. She ran out of the shop. I switched the feed off. 5 minutes later, my cell phone rang. It was Zora. I let it ring 3 times. Then I answered, putting it on speaker. Hello, sweetie. Did you get the money for Coco? You old bastard. She screamed. Her voice was distorted by rage and sobbing. You senile old piece of trash. Zora, I said, acting shocked. What is wrong? They are fake. You gave me fake diamonds. I went to the pawn shop and the guy laughed at me. He offered me $20. $20, Dad. Oh, no, I said, my voice trembling. That cannot be right. Your mother loved those. Oh, wait, what? She shrieked. I might be confusing them, I said slowly. I think those might be the costume jewelry she used for her theater plays. My memory, Zora. It is so foggy. The real ones must be. I do not know where they are. You are useless, she screamed. You are a useless, demented old man. You ruined everything. Brad is going to kill me. Do you hear me? You are dead to me. I hope Mom puts you in that home tomorrow and throws away the key. I hate you. The line went dead. I sat in the silence of my study. Dead to her. She had just confirmed what I already knew. It was never about love. It was never about family. It was always about the payout. And Brad was going to kill her. Not literally, but he was going to be furious. She had failed to get the money. Tony the butcher was still waiting. I looked at the picture of Sarah on my desk. She was wearing the real diamonds in the photo, smiling that smile that could light up a room. I am sorry, Sarah, I whispered. I tried. I really tried with her. But you cannot polish a turd. I stood up. My knees popped. Zora was out of the game. She was broken, humiliated, and powerless. Now I had 2 left, Corinne and Vance, and I had a special surprise for them. I went to the safe in the floor of the closet. I spun the dial. Click, click, click. I opened it. Inside was a black briefcase. I pulled it out. It was heavy. Inside was my listening equipment. Long-range directional microphones, bug detectors, signal jammers. Toys from my old life. I knew where Corinne was going tonight. She told me she had a charity gala, but I knew she was meeting Vance. They met every Thursday at the Motel 6 off the interstate. Classy. I closed the briefcase. Tonight I was going to be a fly on the wall, and tomorrow I was going to be the swatter. The Motel 6 off Interstate 95 was a place dreams went to die. Peeling paint, flickering neon signs, and the constant roar of semi-trucks. It was the last place you would expect to find the wife of a real estate tycoon and a prominent surgeon. But criminals like to hide in the dirt. I sat in my unmarked sedan across the parking lot, the engine off the windows tinted black. I was wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses, looking like just another tired traveler. Next to me on the passenger seat was my directional microphone and a digital recorder. The equipment was old, but it still worked, just like me. Corinne's red Mercedes pulled in at 7 p.m. sharp. She parked in the back away from the lights. She stepped out, looking around nervously, pulling her coat tight around her. She was not dressed for a gala. She was wearing jeans and a hoodie, trying to blend in. But you cannot hide expensive taste. Her shoes alone cost more than the car parked next to her. 5 minutes later, a black BMW arrived. Dr. Vance. He got out, smoothing his hair, checking his reflection in the car window. Vanity even in a dump like this. They met at the door of room 112. They did not hug. They did not kiss. They just slipped inside quickly like cockroaches avoiding the light. I rolled down my window just a crack and pointed the microphone at the door of room 112. I put on my headphones and turned up the gain. The sound of the highway faded, replaced by the muffled voices inside the room. The walls were thin, cheap construction. I would have fired the contractor who built this place. But tonight, I was grateful for it. So Vance said, his voice clear now. "Is it done? Is he taking the pills?" "He took them this morning," Corinne replied. I watched him. "He is already confused, Vance. He forgot where he put his keys. He is stumbling around like a zombie. It is working faster than we thought." "Good," Vance chuckled. "That cocktail is potent. Another week and his brain will be mush. He will sign anything we put in front of him. And then, liver failure. A tragic end for a man with a history of alcohol abuse." I clenched my jaw. They were discussing my murder like they were ordering pizza. "But we have a problem," Corinne said, her voice rising. "Zora called me. She is hysterical. The old fool gave her fake jewelry. She tried to sell it and got laughed out of the pawn shop. Brad is freaking out too." His check bounced. The bank flagged it. Vance sighed. "That girl. She is so impatient. Just like her mother." "Don't start with me, Vance," Corinne snapped. "We need money now. You know Zora needs it for Brad's debts, and we need it for your situation." "My situation is under control," Vance said defensively. "Is it?" Corinne hissed. "You have a malpractice suit hanging over your head, Vance. You killed that patient on the table because you were hungover. The family is suing for $10 million. If you do not pay them off to settle out of court, you lose your license. You lose everything." And then where are we? I froze. Vance was not just a greedy doctor. He was a killer. He had killed a patient and was trying to cover it up with my money. "I will get the money, Corinne," Vance said. "Once Isaiah is gone, we split everything 50-50. Just like we planned 30 years ago. 30 years. I adjusted the volume, my hand shaking. "I cannot believe we pulled it off." Corinne laughed a cruel sound. 30 years, Vance. Do you remember when we met? You were just a resident and I was a waitress. We had nothing. And then I met Isaiah. The lonely widower with the big wallet and the big heart," Vance mocked. "He was so easy to play. He wanted a family so bad. He wanted a legacy. So we gave him one. We gave him Zora," Corinne said. My breath hitched. I pressed the headphones tighter against my ears, praying I had heard wrong. "He never suspected a thing," Vance said. "He raised my daughter thinking she was his little princess. He paid for her schools, her cars, her wedding, and all the while she has my blood in her veins. She looks just like me, Corinne." "How did he not see it?" "Because he sees what he wants to see," Corinne said. "He sees a daughter who loves him. He does not see the truth, that she hates him, that she laughs about him with us. She knows Vance. She knows you are her real father. We told her on her 18th birthday. I felt a physical blow to my chest. It hurt more than the fall from any scaffold. Zora knew. She had known for 10 years. Every hug, every "I love you, Daddy," every Father's Day card. It was all a lie. A performance. They had all been laughing at me. The rich old fool raising another man's child, paying for another man's mistakes. I felt tears prick my eyes, hot and stinging. But I did not let them fall. Crying was for men who had hope. I had no hope left. Only hate. Pure, distilled hate. "So what is the plan now?" Corinne asked. "We accelerate," Vance said. "No more waiting for the pills to work slowly. Tomorrow we take him to the facility. I have a friend who runs a private psych ward in the county. We check him in under an alias. We keep him sedated. We get him to sign the power of attorney and the new will. And then, we up the dosage. One final cocktail. He goes to sleep and never wakes up. Heart failure. Simple. Clean. Tomorrow. They were coming for me tomorrow. And after that, Corinne asked. After that, we are free, my love, Vance said. We take the money. We take the properties. We pay off my lawsuit. We pay off Brad's debts. And we live like kings. We can finally be together, Corinne. No more sneaking around in cheap motels. They started kissing. The sound was wet and revolting. I stopped the recording. I sat in the dark car listening to the hum of the highway. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard the leather creaked. They wanted to be together. They wanted to be a family. I looked at the digital recorder. The little red light was off, but the file was saved. Evidence.wav. I had it all. The confession, the motive, the plan, the paternity. I could go to the police right now. I could have them arrested tonight, but that would be too easy. Prison was too good for them. They would get lawyers. They would make deals. They might even get out in a few years. No, I wanted to destroy them. I wanted to take everything they loved, everything they valued, and turn it into ash in their mouths. I wanted them to feel the way I felt right now. Hollowed out, betrayed, foolish. I wanted to give them a show, a grand finale. Vance needed money to save his career. Corinne needed money to maintain her lifestyle. Brad needed money to save his life. Zora needed money to keep pretending she was somebody. They were all hungry, starving for my wealth. So I would feed them. I would feed them until they choked. I started the car. The engine purred a low growl in the night. I drove out of the parking lot, leaving the lovers to their schemes. I did not go back to the hotel. I went back to the estate. I walked into the house that was not a home. I walked past the family photos on the wall, me and Corinne at the beach, me holding baby Zora, Zora and Vance. No, Zora and me at the park. I took them down one by one. I did not smash them. I just laid them face down on the floor, a graveyard of memories. I went to my study and sat at my desk. I pulled out a fresh sheet of paper. I began to write. Not a suicide note, a script. Tomorrow they were coming to take me away. They were expecting a confused old man. They were going to get the performance of a lifetime. I picked up the phone and dialed Silas. It is time, I said. Is it bad? Silas asked. It is worse than bad, Silas. It is biblical. Zora is Vance's daughter. They have been playing me for 30 years. There was a long silence on the line. Then Silas spoke, his voice low and dangerous. Say the word, Isaiah. Just say the word, and they disappear. Number 1, I said. Death is too quick. I want them to suffer. I want them to lose everything while the world watches. What is the plan? Tomorrow morning they are coming to take me to a psych ward. I am going to let them think they have won. I am going to play along. But before I go, I am going to throw a party. A party. Yes, a farewell party. A celebration of my life. I want everyone there, Silas. My business partners, the city council, the media, and especially Dr. Vance. You want to expose them in public. I want to strip them naked in front of the whole city. I want to show everyone what kind of monsters they are. I will make the calls, Silas said. What about security? Hire the best. I want armed guards at every door. No one leaves until the show is over. Consider it done. One more thing, Silas. Yeah, get Tasha, the nurse. She is scared, Isaiah. Vance threatened her. Find her. Offer her a way out. Tell her she can be a witness or a defendant. Her choice. And pay her. Pay her whatever she wants. I need her to confirm the pills. I will find her. I hung up. I looked at the clock. It was midnight. Tomorrow is going to be a long day. I went upstairs to the master bedroom. Corinne was not back yet. She was probably still with Vance, celebrating their brilliance. I laid down on the bed fully clothed. I closed my eyes, but I did not sleep. I visualized the party. I saw the lights. I saw the food. I saw their smiling faces. And then I saw the screen dropping down. I saw the video playing. I saw their faces crumble. I smiled in the darkness. Sleep tight, my love, I whispered to the empty pillow beside me, because tomorrow you wake up in hell. The smell of roasted chicken filled the dining room, but it turned to ash in my mouth. It was Friday night, the Last Supper. Corinne had set the table with the good china, the stuff we usually saved for Thanksgiving. She was wearing a silk blouse and pearls, looking like the picture of a devoted wife. Brad was wearing a tie for once, though it was loosened around his thick neck. Even Zora was there, picking at her salad with a nervous energy that made her bracelets jingle. They were all smiling. It was the kind of smile you see on a used car salesman right before you sign the lease on a lemon. "We have some wonderful news, Isaiah," Corinne said, pouring me a glass of sparkling water. "We have been so worried about you lately, about your confusion, your safety." I put down my fork. Here it comes. "I am fine, Corinne," I said, letting my voice quaver just enough. "I just get a little mixed up sometimes." "That is exactly it, Pop," Brad interjected, leaning forward. "You are mixed up, and it is dangerous. What if you wander off? What if you leave the stove on? We cannot watch you 24/7. We have jobs, we have lives." He did not have a job. His job was spending my money. "So we found a solution," Corinne said. She reached under the table and pulled out a glossy brochure. She slid it across the mahogany surface like she was dealing a winning hand of poker. Golden Horizon Retreat. She read the title. "It is a luxury facility, Isaiah. Top of the line. They have gardens, activities, specialized medical staff. It is like a permanent vacation." I looked at the brochure. The photos showed smiling seniors playing chess and walking in manicured gardens. But I knew Golden Horizon. I knew the developer who built it back in the 90s. It was a budget project, cut corners, cheap materials. It had been cited for health code violations 3 times in the last decade. It was not a retreat. It was a warehouse for the unwanted. And the price tag, $5,000 a month, cheap, which meant they could pocket the rest of my pension and my investment dividends while I rotted in a room that smelled of bleach and despair. "I do not want to go," I whispered, shrinking back in my chair. "I want to stay here, in my house." "Oh, Daddy," Zora said, reaching out to touch my hand. Her hand was cold. "It is for your own good. You will make friends. You will be safe. Safe from what, Zora? From you." "We already arranged everything," Brad said, pulling a document from his jacket pocket. "The van is coming tomorrow morning at 9. You just need to sign the admission papers. And this." He placed a thick stack of papers next to the brochure. "What is this?" I asked, staring at the dense legal text. "Just standard forms," Corinne said quickly. "Transfer of guardianship, power of attorney for medical decisions. It just means we can handle the billing and make sure you get the best care, since you are not capable anymore." I looked at the document. It was a transfer of guardianship, giving Corinne absolute control over my person and my estate. If I signed this, I was legally a child. I would have no rights, no voice. "I cannot sign that," I said, pushing it away. "I am not invalid." "Isaiah," Corinne's voice turned hard, "do not make this difficult. If you do not sign voluntarily, we will have to get a court order. And if we do that, the judge might send you to a state facility. You do not want that. Golden Horizon is the best option." It was a lie, but it was a terrifying one. "Please," I begged, playing the part, "please do not send me away. Just sign the paper, Pop," Brad said, thrusting a pen at me. "Just sign it and we can all relax." I looked at the pen in his hand, a cheap plastic ballpoint. I looked at their faces. Corinne, the woman I saved from poverty. Zora, the girl I raised as my own. Brad, the leech I welcomed into my home. They were not my family. They were a firing squad. I took a deep breath. My hands were shaking violently, not from age, but from the sheer effort of not strangling them. "Okay," I said brokenly. "Okay, if it makes you happy." I reached into my own pocket. I pulled out my reading glasses and my own pen. It was a heavy silver Mont Blanc, a gift from a senator I helped out of a jam 10 years ago. Or at least that is what it looked like. In reality, it was a specialty item I had commissioned from a chemist friend in Germany. The ink was a proprietary blend. It flowed black and bold. It looked permanent. It smelled like ink. But upon contact with oxygen, it began a slow chemical reaction. Within 24 hours, the pigment would break down completely, leaving the paper as white as snow. It was the ultimate tool for a man who needed to buy time. I adjusted my glasses. I peered at the signature line. I took the cap off my pen. "Make sure you press hard, Isaiah," Corinne said, watching me greedily. "We need 3 copies." I pressed hard. I signed my name. Isaiah Thorne. Not the fake signature I used on the check. My real signature, the one they expected. I signed the first page, the second, the third. Each stroke of the pen felt like a promise that this was not over. "There," I said, dropping the pen. "Are you happy now?" Corinne snatched the papers. She flipped through them, checking the signatures. Her eyes were shining. "Yes, Isaiah," she breathed. "We are very happy. You did the right thing." Brad clapped me on the shoulder. "Good job, Pop. You are going to love Golden Horizon. They have bingo. You love bingo, right? I hate bingo." I stood up. I felt lighter. "I am tired," I said. "I want to go to sleep." "Go ahead," Corinne said, waving her hand dismissively. She was already mentally redecorating my office. "Get some rest. The van will be here early." I walked out of the room. I heard the pop of a champagne cork behind me. "To the future," Brad toasted. "To us," Corinne said. I climbed the stairs one by one. I went into my bedroom and locked the door. Then I wedged a chair under the handle. I did not sleep. I went to the closet and pulled out my laptop. It was hidden in the lining of an old trench coat. I sat on the floor in the corner of the room, away from the windows, away from any prying eyes. I opened the secure browser. I typed in a passkey that changed every day. I connected to Dr. Montgomery's private server. Subject: "The trap is set. Montgomery." They took the bait. I signed the guardianship papers with the disappearing ink. By tomorrow afternoon, when they try to file them with the county clerk, those papers will be blank sheets. They will look like fools. But we need to move fast. They are sending me to Golden Horizon tomorrow morning. I need you to have the emergency injunction ready. And I need a team. I am drafting the revocation of trust and the affidavit of competency right now. I am also uploading the audio files from the hotel and the video from the pawn shop. Do not file anything yet. Wait for my signal. I want them to think they have won until the very last second. Isaiah. I spent the next 6 hours typing. I wrote with the fury of a man who had been silent for too long. I detailed every theft, every lie, every threat. I listed the account numbers, the dates, the amounts. I built a fortress of evidence brick by brick, just like I used to build skyscrapers. My fingers flew across the keys. My mind was crystal clear. The scopolamine had worn off days ago thanks to my little trick. At 3 a.m. I heard footsteps in the hall. The doorknob rattled. "Isaiah." It was Corinne. "Are you awake?" I froze. I shut the laptop silently. I made a snoring sound, low and rhythmic. She rattled the knob again. Locked. "Old fool is paranoid." She laughed softly and walked away. I waited until her footsteps faded. I opened the laptop again. I had one more document to draft. The most important one. The last will and testament of Isaiah Thorne. I deleted the old one, the one that left everything to my loving wife and daughter. I started a new page. "I, Isaiah Thorne, being of sound mind and body, hereby revoke all former wills and codicils." I typed names. Not Corinne, not Zora, not Brad. I typed the names of the people who actually mattered. The foreman who saved my life on a job site in '89. The waitress at the diner who always gave me extra pie and never knew I was rich. The scholarship fund for kids from my old neighborhood. And Tasha. The nurse who was scared but could still be turned. I set aside a fund for her legal defense and a bonus if she testified. I finished typing as the first gray light of dawn crept through the curtains. I saved the files. I sent them to Montgomery. I wiped the laptop and hid it back in the coat. I stood up and stretched. My bones creaked. Today was the day. At 9 a.m., the van would come. They would try to take me. But they did not know that the man they were coming for was not a patient. He was a plaintiff. I went to the bathroom and shaved. I looked at my face in the mirror. The lines were deep, but the eyes were bright. I put on my best suit, not the comfortable slacks I wore around the house. My charcoal gray 3-piece suit, the one I wore to board meetings when I was about to fire someone. I tied my tie. A Windsor knot. Perfect. I put my gold watch on my wrist. I unlocked the bedroom door and removed the chair. I heard the rumble of a heavy vehicle in the driveway. The van. It was time. I opened the door and stepped out into the hallway. Corinne was coming up the stairs. She stopped when she saw me. Her mouth dropped open. She was expecting a confused old man in pajamas. She found a CEO dressed for war. "Isaiah," she stammered. "What? Why are you dressed like that?" I smiled. A shark smile. "Because Corinne," I said, my voice booming in the high-ceilinged hall. "If I am going on a vacation, I want to look my best." I walked past her down the stairs, my steps heavy and sure. The game was over. The slaughter was about to begin. The white van idling in my driveway was not a medical transport, it was a prison cell on wheels. It had the logo of Golden Horizon plastered on the side, a cheerful sun rising over a green hill, but the windows were tinted black and the exhaust coughed gray smoke into the morning air. I stood at the bottom of the grand staircase in my charcoal three-piece suit, feeling the weight of the moment settling on my shoulders like a concrete slab. Corinne stood by the front door. She was wringing her hands, a gesture she had perfected to show concern when she was actually suppressing glee. Brad and Zora were behind her, hovering like vultures who had smelled blood on the wind. Two men stepped out of the van. They were not nurses. They were not doctors. They were muscle. Both of them were over 6 feet tall, wearing white uniforms that were too tight across their chests. They looked like bouncers who had been fired from a dive bar for being too rough. "Mr. Thorne." The bigger one grunted. He did not ask. He stated. I stood tall. I gripped the head of my cane. "I am Isaiah Thorne," I said, my voice steady. "We are here to escort you," the man said, stepping into the foyer. His boots left mud on the marble. Corinne stepped forward, wiping a dry eye. "Oh, Isaiah, please do not make this difficult. These nice men are here to help you. It is time to go to your new home." Home. She called a facility with barred windows and chemical restraints a home. I looked at her. I looked at the greed radiating off her like heat waves off asphalt. "I am not going anywhere," I said. "Not until I say so." Brad stepped up. "Come on, Pop. Do not cause a scene. Just get in the van. We will visit you. We promise." He was lying. Once I was in that van, I would never see them again. I would be a line item in a ledger, a problem solved. The big orderly reached for me. He grabbed my arm. His grip was iron. It was not a gentle guide. It was a clamp. "Let's go, Grandpa," he sneered. "Easy or hard, your choice." Pain shot up my shoulder. The disrespect burned hotter than the pain. I built this house. I paid for the floor he was standing on, and he was handling me like a sack of garbage. I planted my feet. I hooked my cane around the heavy brass handle of the front door. "Wait!" I shouted. My voice boomed, echoing off the high ceiling. The orderly tugged, but I held fast. Adrenaline is a powerful thing, even at 75. "I have an announcement," I yelled, looking directly at Corinne. "I have made a decision. A financial decision. The magic words. Financial decision." Corinne froze. Her hand went up, signaling the goons to stop. "What did you say, Isaiah?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. The orderly loosened his grip, but did not let go. I straightened my tie with my free hand. I took a deep breath. I had to sell this. I had to be the manic, grandiose King Lear they thought I was. I said, "I have made a decision." I looked from Corinne to Zora to Brad. "I know why you are doing this. I know you think I am losing my mind. And maybe I am. Maybe the fog is closing in." I paused, letting them absorb that. Admission of weakness. It made them feel safe. It made them feel superior. But, I continued, raising a finger, I still have moments of clarity. And in this moment I realize that I cannot take it with me. The money, the empire. It is all just dust in the end. Brad took a step forward. He was salivating. I could practically see the dollar signs spinning in his eyes. "What are you saying, Pop?" "I am saying," I declaimed, putting a hand over my heart, "that I do not want to wait until I die for you to enjoy your inheritance. I do not want the state to take it in taxes. I do not want lawyers fighting over my bones." I looked at the van, then back at them. "If I am going away today, if I am really leaving this life behind, then I want to leave with a clean slate. I want to distribute the assets, today, right now." The silence in the foyer was absolute. Even the orderlies seemed interested. "Distribute," Corinne whispered. "You mean, give it to us. Everything," I said, spreading my arms wide. "The accounts, the properties, the portfolio. I want to sign it all over. I want to see you happy before I go into the dark. I want to hand you the checks myself. I saw the calculation happening in real time behind Corinne's eyes. She was weighing the risk. On one hand, she had the plan. The van was here. The facility was ready. She could stick to the script, but that would take time. Probate courts, legal battles, managing a conservatorship. It was messy. It could take months to liquidate the assets. On the other hand, here was the golden goose offering to cut its own throat and serve itself on a platter immediately. But Isaiah, she said, her voice trembling with avarice, you refused to sign the papers last night. I was scared then. I lied smoothly. I was confused, but seeing these men, seeing the end, it clarifies things. I want to do this, but not like this, not in a rush. I pulled my arm free from the orderly. He let me go, looking at Corinne for instructions. I want a party, I declared. A party, Zora asked. Yes, a farewell party, tonight, here in this house. I want you to invite everyone, my business partners, the board members, your friends, and Dr. Vance, especially Dr. Vance. He has been so good to me. I smiled a beatific, senile smile. I want a grand dinner, and at the end of the night I will sign the living will. I will hand over the power of attorney. I will give Brad the check for his investment. I will give Zora her trust fund. And Corinne, I will give you the keys to the kingdom. I looked at Brad. I saw the desperation in his eyes. He needed that money today, but tonight was close enough. Tonight he could tell Tony the butcher that the check was in his hand. We should do it, Corinne, Brad whispered loudly. If he signs willingly, it is bulletproof. No one can contest it later. Zora nodded vigorously. Think about it, Mom. No court dates, no waiting, instant cash. Corinne looked at the van. Then she looked at me. She looked at my suit. She thought she was looking at a man trying to regain a shred of dignity before the end. She thought she was looking at an ego she could manipulate one last time. She did not see the trap. She only saw the cheese. Okay, she said slowly. Okay, Isaiah. If that is what you want, we can wait one more day. She turned to the orderlies. You can go. Come back tomorrow morning at 8. The big orderly scowled. You still have to pay for the call-out, lady. Corinne waved a hand dismissively. Send me the bill. Just go. The orderlies grumbled and walked back to the van. The heavy doors slammed shut. The engine roared and the vehicle backed out of the driveway. I watched them go. I felt a wave of relief so strong my knees almost buckled, but I held firm. I could not show weakness now. Thank you, Corinne, I said. Thank you for granting an old man his final wish. This is going to be wonderful, Corinne said, clapping her hands. Her eyes were bright and hard. A party? Yes. We will order catering. We will get champagne. We need to celebrate your generosity, Isaiah. She walked over and kissed my cheek. Her lips were cold. You go rest now, darling. Save your energy for tonight. We have a lot of calls to make. She turned to Brad and Zora. Get on the phone. Invite everyone. Tell them it is a retirement party. Tell them Isaiah is stepping down and handing over the reins. Make it sound dignified. I watched them scatter. They were giddy. They were high on the promise of millions. Brad pulled out his phone before he even left the hall, probably texting his bookie. Zora was already planning her outfit. They ran off to prepare their own victory lap. I stood alone in the hallway. The silence returned. They thought I was giving them the world. They did not know I was actually handing them an indictment. I turned and walked back up the stairs. My steps were heavy on the wood. I had bought myself 12 hours. 12 hours to set the stage. 12 hours to make sure every rat was in the trap before I snapped the neck. I went into my study and closed the door. I went to the safe and pulled out the cash I had withdrawn. $5,000 in $100 bills. I put it in an envelope. Then I picked up my burner phone. Silas, I said when he answered. Did it work? Like a charm. The van is gone. The party is on. Good. The security team is on standby. They will look like caterers, but they are armed. No one gets in or out without your say-so. Perfect. Now I need you to do the hard part. Tasha. Yes. The nurse. I found her, Isaiah. She is terrified. Vance told her if she breathes a word, he will ruin her. He will make sure she never works in medicine again. She is going to be here tonight, Silas. I need her here. She will not come, Isaiah. She is hiding at her sister's place in Queens. She will come, I said. Because you are going to go there right now. You are going to give her this envelope with $5,000, and you are going to give her a plane ticket to wherever she wants to go. Hawaii, Paris. I do not care. One way, first class. You are bribing her. I am buying her freedom, Silas. Tell her she has two choices. Choice A, she stays here, keeps quiet, and when Vance goes down for murder and fraud, which he will, she goes down with him as an accessory. She goes to prison. Choice B, she comes to the party tonight. She stands up when I call her name. She tells the truth about the pills and the fake diagnosis, and then she gets in a car, goes to the airport, and starts a new life with cash in her pocket. I paused. Tell her I will also pay for her legal defense if it comes to that. But if she testifies tonight, she becomes the hero, the whistleblower. The jury will love her. Silas was silent for a moment. That is a hell of an offer. It is the only offer, I said. Get her, Silas. Drag her here if you have to. But treat her gently. She is a victim in this too. Vance used her. I am on my way. I hung up. I sat back in my chair. I looked at the wall clock. It was 10 a.m. The party started at 7. I had 9 hours. I opened my laptop. I had one more video to edit. The grand finale. I had the audio from the motel. I had the video from the pawn shop. I had the bank records Silas had pulled showing Brad's fraud. I needed to stitch it all together. I needed to make a movie called The Truth. I worked through lunch. I did not eat. I fed on adrenaline. Around 2 p.m., I heard the caterers arriving downstairs, the clatter of plates, the murmur of voices. Corinne was in her element, directing traffic, playing the grand dame of the manor. Isaiah, she called up the stairs. Make sure you wear your blue suit tonight, the one you wore to Zora's wedding. It looks so distinguished. I ignored her. I was wearing the charcoal suit, the one I wore when I buried my enemies. At 4 p.m., Silas texted me. Package secured. She is crying, but she is coming. We will be there at 6:30. Entering through the kitchen, I let out a breath. Tasha was the final nail. With her testimony, Vance was done. At 6 p.m., I showered and dressed again. I looked at myself in the mirror. I saw a 75-year-old man. I saw the lines on my face, the gray in my beard. But I also saw the boy from the projects who fought his way out with nothing but grit. I was not just Isaiah Thorne, the victim. I was Isaiah Thorne, the architect. And tonight, I was going to bring the house down. I heard the first cars arriving on the gravel driveway. Luxury cars, Porsches, Bentleys. The sharks were gathering. I put the USB drive with the video in my pocket. I checked my phone one last time to make sure the connection to the projector system was secure. I walked out onto the landing. Below me, the foyer was filling with people. Men in tuxedos, women in gowns. Champagne was flowing. The chandelier was sparkling. Corinne was at the door greeting guests with Brad and Zora by her side. They looked like the perfect family, the golden trio. Brad saw me at the top of the stairs. He nudged Corinne. They all looked up. The chatter died down. Faces turned towards me. I gripped the banister. I did not smile. I descended the stairs slowly, step by step. Every eye was on me. I saw Vance in the crowd holding a glass of scotch, looking smug. He nodded at me, a mockery of respect. I saw my business partners, men I had worked with for 40 years, looking at me with a mix of curiosity and pity. They had heard the rumors. They thought they were here to say goodbye to a senile old man. They had no idea. I reached the bottom of the stairs. Corinne rushed over and took my arm. There he is, she announced to the room. My husband, the man of the hour. She squeezed my arm hard. Her nails dug into my suit. Smile, Isaiah, she hissed through her teeth. Don't embarrass us. I looked at her. I looked deep into her eyes. I am not going to embarrass you, Corinne, I whispered back. I am going to destroy you. She frowned, confused. She did not hear me clearly over the noise of the crowd. What did you say? I pulled my arm away. I said, let the party begin. I walked into the center of the room. The crowd parted for me. It was time to feed the lions. The house became a hive of activity the moment the white van disappeared down the driveway. It was as if a starting gun had been fired. Corinne was on her phone, instantly barking orders to caterers and florists. She was not planning a retirement party. She was planning a coronation. She was the queen ascending to the throne, and I was the old king stepping aside to die quietly in the corner. I sat in my study listening to the chaos. I had told them I needed to rest to gather my strength for the big announcement. In reality, I was orchestrating the final movements of my symphony. Corinne came in breathless, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "Isaiah," she said, "I have ordered the lobster and the vintage Dom Perignon. It is going to be spectacular. Who else do you want to invite?" "Everyone," I said, leaning back in my leather chair. "I want the entire board of directors. I want my old foreman. I want the mayor. And Corinne." "Yes, darling. I want Dr. Vance there." Corinne froze. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "Dr. Vance?" she asked carefully. "Why him?" "He is just your doctor. He is the man who helped me see clearly," I said, my voice thick with hidden meaning. "He diagnosed me. He found me a home. I want to thank him publicly. I want to give him a bonus, a big one." Greed warred with caution in her eyes. Bringing her lover to the house was risky, but the promise of a bonus of more money siphoned from my accounts was too tempting. "Of course," she said, her smile returning brighter and falser than before. "I will call him. He will be honored." She left the room. I could hear her heels clicking on the hardwood floor, a staccato rhythm of avarice. I stood up and walked to the door, cracking it open just enough to hear. Brad was in the hallway, pacing back and forth. He was on his cell phone, his voice loud and booming. "Yeah, Tony, I told you. Tonight. The old man is signing over everything. Power of attorney, the whole 9 yards. I will have access to the main accounts by midnight." He paused, listening to the threats on the other end. "Relax. I am good for it. In fact, put me down for another 10 grand on the game this weekend. I am feeling lucky. No, actually, I am feeling rich. I am going to buy a boat, Tony. A big one. Maybe I will name it the Isaiah. You know, in memory of the golden goose." He laughed. It was a wet, ugly sound. I closed the door silently. He was doubling down on his debt because he thought I was a bottomless pit of cash. He thought the ink on those papers was going to turn into gold. He did not know it was going to turn into handcuffs. I checked my watch. 5:30. Silas was due any minute. I went to the French doors that opened onto the back patio. The sun was starting to dip, casting long shadows across the lawn where I used to play catch with Zora. A black SUV pulled into the service entrance around the back. It was Silas. I slipped out the side door and met him by the kitchen entrance. The caterers were already inside, making noise, clattering pans so no one noticed us. Silas stepped out of the car. He looked grim. He opened the back door. Tasha stepped out. She looked terrified. She was wearing a hoodie pulled up over her head and she was shaking. Her eyes were red and swollen. She looked like a woman who had been running for a long time. "Mr. Thorne," she whispered, "please. I did not want to do it. He made me." I held up a hand. "Come inside, Tasha. We need to talk." We went into the pantry, a small room off the kitchen lined with shelves of expensive ingredients Corinne bought but never cooked. It smelled of dried herbs and dust. Silas stood guard at the door. I looked at Tasha. She was young, maybe 25. She had her whole life ahead of her, and Vance had turned her into an accessory to attempted murder. "Tasha," I said, my voice low and steady, "I know what Vance told you. I know he threatened your license. I know he threatened your future." She nodded, tears spilling over. "He said he would blacklist me. He said he would tell everyone I stole drugs. Who would believe a nurse over a famous surgeon?" "I would," I said. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the envelope. Inside this envelope, Tasha, is a plane ticket to London, first class, one way. There is also a cashier's check for $50,000. Enough to start over. Enough to live quietly until the heat dies down. Her eyes widened. She stared at the envelope like it was a bomb. "Why?" she asked. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I need you," I said. "I need you to walk into that living room tonight when I call your name. I need you to look at Corinne and look at Vance and tell the truth. I need you to say exactly what pills he made you give me. I need you to confirm that the dementia diagnosis was fake." She started to shake her head, backing away. "I cannot. He will kill me. He cannot hurt you, Tasha." I stepped closer. "Because the moment you speak, he is finished. The police are already involved. But they need a witness to make the charges stick. They need you." I paused, letting the weight of the situation settle on her. "You have two choices, Tasha. Choice A, you take this envelope. You testify. You become the hero who saved an old man from being murdered. Then you get on a plane and you go live your life. Choice B, you walk out that door, you keep running. But when the police arrest Vance, and they will arrest him tonight, he will blame you. He will say you stole the drugs. He will say you poisoned me, and you will go to prison for 20 years. I held out the envelope. Prison or Paris, Tasha, it is up to you. She looked at the envelope. She looked at me. I saw the fear in her eyes, but I also saw something else. Relief. She wanted a way out. She wanted to stop running. She reached out and took the envelope. Her hand brushed mine. Her skin was cold. I will do it, she whispered. I will tell them everything. Good girl, I said. Silas will stay with you. He will keep you safe until it is time. Do not let anyone see you. She nodded, clutching the envelope to her chest. I left her in the pantry with Silas and walked back into the main house. The transformation was almost complete. The house looked magnificent. Fresh flowers on every surface, soft jazz playing over the speakers, waiters in white jackets moving with silent efficiency, carrying trays of hors d'oeuvres. It looked like a funeral parlor dressed up for a wedding. Corinne was coming down the stairs. She had changed into a gold-sequined gown that hugged her curves. She looked like a trophy. She looked like money. Isaiah. She called out, beaming. You look dashing. Come here. Let me fix your tie. I stood still while she adjusted the silk knot at my throat. Her hands lingered. She was practically vibrating with victory. Tonight is going to be perfect, she whispered. Everyone is coming. They are all going to see how generous you are. Generous. That was the word she used for theft. I looked at her. I remembered the day I met her. She was a hostess at a restaurant I was building. She was young, hungry, and beautiful. I thought I was saving her. I thought I was giving her a life she deserved. I did not know I was feeding a parasite that would eventually try to consume the host. You look beautiful, Corinne, I said. Thank you, darling. She kissed my cheek. Now go into the library. Brad is setting up the projector for your speech. He wants to make sure the lighting is right. My speech, the one where I was supposed to hand over my life. I walked into the library. Brad was there messing with a laptop connected to a large screen we usually used for Super Bowl parties. Hey, Pop, he said, not looking up. Just getting the slideshow ready. Corinne sent me some old photos, trying to make it nostalgic, you know. Tearjerker stuff. It will soften up the crowd before you sign the papers. He was writing my eulogy while I was standing right there. That is thoughtful of you, Brad, I said. I slipped my hand into my pocket and touched the USB drive. Make sure the sound is on, I said. I want everyone to hear every word. Oh, it is on, loud and clear. Brad grinned. The doorbell rang. The first guests were arriving. I felt a surge of adrenaline. It was the same feeling I used to get before a building inspection. The nerves, the focus, the absolute clarity of purpose. I walked out to the foyer. The heavy oak doors swung open. Dr. Vance walked in. He was wearing a tuxedo. He looked like a movie star. He had a woman on his arm who was not Corinne, but she was just a prop. His eyes scanned the room looking for the prize. He saw me. He smiled. It was the smile of a man who thinks he has gotten away with murder. Isaiah, he boomed, walking towards me with his hand extended. You look fantastic. The treatment is obviously working. I took his hand. His grip was firm, but his palms were soft. It is working, doctor, I said, squeezing his hand just a little too hard. I have never felt more awake in my life. He pulled his hand back, slightly confused by my strength. Well, that is great. We are just so happy for you. Behind him, more guests poured in. My business partners, men in gray suits who had been waiting for me to retire for years. My old foreman, Big Mike, who looked uncomfortable in a tie. The mayor, who was always looking for a donation. They filled the room with chatter and laughter. The air smelled of expensive perfume and impending disaster. Corinne was circulating, laughing too loud, touching arms, clinking glasses. She was in her element. She was the queen of the ball. Zora was showing off her engagement ring to a group of friends, telling them about the new house she was going to buy. She did not mention the fake diamonds. She was already spending the inheritance she thought she was getting tonight. I stood by the fireplace, leaning on my cane, watching them. They were drunk on greed. They were high on the promise of easy money. They did not see the tiger in the tall grass. Silas texted me. Asset in position. Police are 2 minutes out, waiting for your signal. I looked at the clock. 7:30. It was time. I tapped my glass with a spoon. The sharp ting-ting-ting cut through the noise of the party. The room went quiet. Faces turned towards me. Expectant, eager. Corinne stepped up beside me, slipping her arm through mine. She was trembling with anticipation. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, "my husband Isaiah has something he wants to say." I looked at the crowd. I looked at Vance, standing near the front, swirling his scotch. I looked at Brad, giving me a thumbs up from the back of the room. I looked at Zora, smiling her fake smile. I took a deep breath. "Thank you all for coming," I said, my voice strong and clear. "I know there have been rumors about my health, rumors about my mind." I paused. I let the silence stretch. "Well, I am here to tell you that tonight we are going to put those rumors to rest. Tonight I am going to give you the truth." I pulled the remote control for the projector from my pocket. "And I promise you," I said, looking directly at Vance, "it is going to be a night you will never forget." I pressed the button. The lights went out. The lights in the grand salon dimmed, but the chandelier still cast a warm golden glow over the assembled crowd. I sat in a wheelchair. I did not need a prop Silas had procured from a medical supply company that morning. It was oversized, making me look small and frail. I slumped to one side, letting my head loll slightly, my mouth open just enough to be unseemly. I had even dabbed a bit of water on my chin to simulate drool. It was a humiliating performance, but necessary. I needed them to see a husk. I needed them to believe the lion was not just toothless, but dying. Corinne stood next to me, her hand resting on my shoulder, not with affection, but with possession. She was the hunter posing with her kill. Her other hand held a flute of champagne, and she was beaming at the room. "My friends, family, colleagues," Corinne began, her voice trilling with false emotion. "Thank you for being here on this momentous night. As you know, Isaiah has been struggling with his health lately. It has been a difficult journey. But tonight is about celebration. It is about honoring a man who has given so much." There were murmurs of sympathy from the crowd. Poor Isaiah. Such a tragedy. I watched them through half-closed eyes. I saw the pity on the faces of my old business partners. I saw the greed on the faces of Corinne's friends who were already calculating how to ingratiate themselves with the new matriarch. And then Brad stepped forward. He had changed into a suit that was too shiny, too new. He looked like a televangelist selling salvation for a low monthly price. He held a microphone, and his face was contorted into a mask of pious sorrow. "If I could say a few words," Brad said, his voice trembling with practiced grief. "I have only been part of this family for a few years, but in that time Isaiah has become more than a father-in-law to me. He has been a mentor, a guide, a rock. I wanted to vomit. The only thing I had mentored him on was how not to go bankrupt, and he had failed that lesson spectacularly. Watching him fade like this," Brad continued, wiping a non-existent tear, "it breaks my heart. But it also inspires me. It inspires me to step up, to carry the torch. Isaiah taught me that family comes first. That is why I am here, to protect his legacy, to make sure everything he built is safe." He looked at me with eyes that said, "I am going to spend your money on strippers and cocaine." Safe, I thought. You could not keep a goldfish safe, Brad. There was a round of polite applause. Zora clapped the loudest, looking at her husband with adoration that was fueled entirely by the delusion of wealth. Then it was Vance's turn. The good doctor stepped out of the shadows, his tuxedo impeccable, his hair perfect. He raised his glass. "To Isaiah." Vance said, his voice smooth as silk. "A patient, a friend, a legend. As his physician, I have walked this difficult road with him. We have fought the darkness together. And though the mind may fade, the spirit remains. Isaiah's generosity tonight, his decision to empower his family while he still can. It is the ultimate act of love. It is a medical miracle of the heart. A medical miracle." He called chemically induced dementia a miracle. The crowd toasted. "To Isaiah." They chorused. I let out a low groan and shifted in the wheelchair. I let my hand spasm, hitting the armrest. "Oh dear," Corinne said, leaning down. "Are you okay, darling? Do you need some water?" I looked up at her. I saw the contempt in her eyes. It was naked now. She thought I was too far gone to notice. She looked at me like I was a stain on her carpet. I mumbled, letting the words slur together. "What is it?" she asked impatiently. "Speak up, Isaiah. I want to watch the movie." Corinne straightened up, smiling at the guests. "He wants to watch the tribute video." Brad prepared a beautiful slideshow, memories of a life well lived. She gestured to Brad. "Go ahead, Brad. Start the show." Brad grinned and gave a thumbs up to someone in the back. "Lights, please," Corinne called out. The chandelier dimmed until the room was almost pitch black. A large screen descended from the ceiling with a mechanical whir covering the bay windows. The hum of the projector filled the silence. I sat up straight in the wheelchair. I wiped the water from my chin. I adjusted my tie. The darkness was my ally now. In the dark, they could not see the change. They could not see the predator waking up. The screen flickered to life. But it was not the slideshow of old photos Brad had prepared. It was not the sepia-toned nostalgia trip set to sentimental music. It was a stark, high-definition video feed. The image on the screen was grainy at first, then it sharpened. It showed a dimly lit room. A man sat at a poker table surrounded by smoke and empty glasses. He looked disheveled, sweaty, and terrified. It was Brad. The video was from 3 days ago. It was footage from the security camera in the back room of the Blue Velvet nightclub, the club I owned. The audio crackled, then boomed through the speakers I had installed specifically for this moment. "Please, Tony," Brad's voice echoed in the silent salon. "I just need a little more time. The old man is dying. I swear, he is losing his mind. My wife is taking control of the estate next week." A collective gasp went through the room. On screen, a large man stepped into the frame. Tony the Butcher. He grabbed Brad by the collar and slammed him onto the table. "I do not care about your dead daddy-in-law," Tony growled. "I care about my 200 grand. You have until Friday, Brad. Or I take a finger for every 10,000. I will get it." Brad screamed on screen. "I will steal it if I have to. The old bastard does not know what day it is. I am forging his signature on checks. I am selling his car. Just give me time." The video cut to black. The lights in the salon were still off, but the silence was screaming. I could feel the shockwave hitting the room. Then the screen lit up again. This time it was a document. A check. A check for $2 million made out to Apex Digital Solutions. The camera zoomed in on the signature, I.D. Thorne. And then a voiceover played, my voice recorded earlier that day, clear, strong, and authoritative. "This is a check my son-in-law tried to cash yesterday. He told me it was for a tech investment. In reality, it was to pay off a gambling debt to a known organized crime figure. Notice the signature. It is a fake. A test I set for a thief. The lights came up just a fraction, enough to see faces." Brad was standing near the projector, his face the color of ash. He looked like he was about to faint. Zora was staring at him, her hand over her mouth. Corinne looked confused. She looked at me. But I was still slumped in the chair playing possum. She looked back at the screen, terrified of what was coming next. But I was not done. Not even close. I reached into the pocket of my jacket and pulled out a microphone I had hidden there. I clicked it on. I sat up. I stood up. I kicked the wheelchair away. It rolled across the floor and crashed into a side table, knocking over a vase of flowers. The sound was like a gunshot. I stood tall in the center of the room. I smoothed my jacket. I looked at the crowd. "I have a movie I want to show you all," I said. My voice boomed through the speakers. No slur, no weakness, just the raw power of a man who has built empires. Corinne gasped. She stepped back, stumbling in her heels. "Isaiah, you can walk." I looked at her. I smiled. "I can walk, Corinne. I can talk. And unfortunately for you, I can hear." I pointed the remote at the screen. "And now for the feature presentation." I pressed the button. The screen flickered again. This time it showed a hotel room door, room 112. The nightmare was just beginning for them. And I was the director. The image on the screen shifted. The hotel room door faded to black and a new scene flickered into existence. It was grainy footage, low light, and high contrast, like something from a surveillance camera in a bunker. The timestamp in the corner read 3 days ago. The location was unmistakably the back room of the Blue Velvet nightclub. The room was thick with cigar smoke. Bottles of expensive vodka littered the table. In the center of the frame sat Brad. He looked nothing like the polished, grieving son-in-law standing in my living room right now. On the screen, his tie was undone, his hair was a mess, and his eyes were wide with a chemically fueled panic. He was talking to a man whose back was to the camera, a man with shoulders like a linebacker, Tony the butcher. Please, Tony. Brad's voice cracked through the speakers in my salon. Just give me another week. The old man is basically dead. He is walking around like a zombie. We have him on a cocktail that is melting his brain. A collective gasp rippled through the party guests. I saw the mayor cover his mouth. I saw my old foreman Mike clench his fists. On the screen, Tony leaned forward. I do not care about your domestic problems, Brad. I care about my money. 200,000. You said you would have it yesterday. I will have it. Brad screamed on the video, slamming his hand on the table. I am forging his signature on checks right now. I have his checkbook. I practiced his signature for hours. Look. The video cut to a close-up from a different angle. It showed Brad hunched over a piece of paper holding my gold pen. He was tracing my signature over and over again, his tongue sticking out in concentration. I am going to drain his investment accounts first, Brad said, his voice dripping with malice. Then we are going to sell the cars. And once I get power of attorney next week, we pull the plug. Literally. If he does not die from the liver failure, we will just help him along. A pillow over the face. Who is going to autopsy a 75-year-old man with a history of drinking? The silence in my living room was shattered. That is a lie. Brad screamed. He was standing near the projector, his face a mask of sheer terror. He looked at the screen, then at the crowd, then at me. It is a deep fake, he yelled, pointing a shaking finger at the screen. It is AI. He made it up. He is trying to frame me. I stood there motionless, my hand resting on my cane. I did not need to say a word. The video spoke for itself. On the screen, Brad was laughing now, a manic, high-pitched sound. I am going to be rich, Tony. We are all going to be rich. And the best part is, the old fool thinks I love him. He thinks I am the son he never had. He looks at me with those watery eyes and calls me son. It makes me want to puke. Brad let out a roar of inarticulate rage. He lunged. He did not come for me. He went for the laptop sitting on the table connected to the projector. He wanted to kill the image. He wanted to stop the truth. Turn it off. He screamed, charging through the crowd. Guests scrambled out of his way, knocking over chairs and spilling drinks. He was a desperate animal, cornered and rabid. But he never made it to the laptop. Two of the waiters who had been serving champagne stepped forward. They were not waiters. They were private security contractors, ex-military men Silas had hired. They moved with a speed and precision that made Brad look like a clumsy child. One of them caught Brad by the arm, spinning him around. The other grabbed his shoulder. They slammed him down onto the Persian rug, not gently. Brad grunted as the wind was knocked out of him. He struggled, kicking his legs, trying to bite. "Let me go!" he shrieked. "You cannot touch me! I will sue you! I will sue all of you!" The guards held him down, pinning his arms behind his back. They looked at me, waiting for instructions. I walked over to him. My steps were slow and deliberate. The sound of my shoes on the floor was the only sound in the room. I stopped right in front of him. I looked down. He looked up at me, his face pressed against the carpet, his eyes wild. "It is fake, Isaiah," he sputtered, spitting saliva. "You know it is fake. You know I love you." I signaled to the guards. "Let him up." They hesitated but obeyed, pulling Brad to his knees. He stayed there panting, his suit jacket torn, his dignity gone. I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket. I pulled out a piece of paper. It was a promissory note. The original note Brad had signed with Tony the butcher. It was stained with a coffee ring and smelled of stale tobacco. "You want to talk about fake, Brad?" I asked, my voice calm and cold. "Let us talk about real. This is real." I held the paper up so he could see it. "This is the debt note you signed 6 months ago. $200,000 at 20% monthly interest. You put up your life as collateral." Brad's eyes widened. He recognized the paper. He knew exactly what it was. How did you get that?" he whispered. "I bought it," I said simply. I leaned closer so only he could hear the steel in my voice, though the microphone picked up every syllable. "I called Tony this morning. We go way back, Tony and I, back to the days when we were both trying to survive on the streets. I made him an offer. I offered to buy your debt for $150,000 cash, immediate payment." I paused, letting it sink in. "Tony is a businessman, Brad. He knows you are a bad bet. He knows you are a liar and a thief. He was happy to take 75 cents on the dollar just to be done with you." I dropped the paper. It floated down and landed on Brad's knees. "You do not owe Tony anymore," I said, straightening up. "You owe me." I looked at the crowd. I wanted them to witness this. You wanted my money to pay your debts. Well, congratulations. You got your wish. My money paid your debt, but now I am the collection agency. Brad shook his head, tears streaming down his face. Please, Isaiah, do not do this. I am family. Family. I laughed a dry, harsh sound. You stood in my kitchen and poisoned my wine. You stood in that club and talked about suffocating me with a pillow. That is not family, Brad. That is a parasite. I snapped my fingers. One of the guards handed me a clipboard. I have filed a lien against every asset you own, Brad. Your car, your watch, even the designer suit on your back. It was all bought with my money or credit obtained fraudulently in my name. I am taking it all back. I looked at Zora. She was standing by the window, paralyzed. She looked at her husband on the floor, and I saw the revulsion in her face. She was not disgusted by his morality. She was disgusted by his failure. And as for the attempted murder charge, I continued, the police are waiting outside. They have been watching the stream. They heard your confession. Brad collapsed. He did not just kneel, he folded in on himself like a building imploding. He put his head in his hands and began to sob. It was a pathetic sound, the sound of a man who realized he had bet his life on a pair of deuces and lost to a royal flush. The room erupted into whispers. The shock had worn off, replaced by the thrill of the scandal. Phones were out recording every second. Brad was trending before he even hit the floor. But I was not done. I looked at Brad weeping on my rug. He was the small fish. He was the distraction. I looked up. My eyes found Corinne. She was standing near the bar, clutching her champagne glass so hard I thought it would shatter. Her face was pale, but her eyes were defiant. She thought she could still talk her way out of this. She thought because her hands were clean of the actual dirt she was safe. And next to her, Dr. Vance was inching towards the door. He was trying to slip away unnoticed. He thought he could disappear into the night and claim he had nothing to do with Brad's madness. I raised the microphone again. Do not go, Dr. Vance, I said. The show is just getting started. Vance froze. He turned slowly, a forced smile plastered on his face. Isaiah, he said, his voice tight. This is very distressing. Obviously, Brad is a disturbed young man. I had no idea. I think I should leave and let you handle this family matter. Family matter, I repeated. I walked back to the center of the room, stepping over Brad's sobbing form. You are right, Doctor. It is a family matter. But you are part of the family, aren't you? Vance's smile wavered. I am your Dr. Isaiah. Are you? I asked. Or are you something else? I pointed the remote at the screen again. Brad was the appetizer. I announced to the room, now for the main course. I pressed the button. The image of the sobbing Brad faded. The screen went black for a second. Then the image of the motel room door appeared. Room 112. The number was peeling off the wood. I saw Corinne gasp. Her hand flew to her throat. She recognized that door. She had walked through it 100 times. Vance stopped moving. He stared at the screen, and for the first time I saw real fear in his eyes. I hope you all like romance movies, I said, because this one is a tragedy. I pressed play. The audio from the motel room filled the salon loud and crystal clear. So, is it done? Is he taking the pills? He took them this morning. I watched him. He is already confused, Vance. The crowd went silent again. This was different. Brad was a gambling addict, desperate and stupid. This was cold-blooded calculation. This was a wife and a doctor plotting the slow, agonizing death of a husband and patient. I watched Corinne. She began to shake. She looked around the room looking for an exit, looking for an ally. But there were no allies here, only witnesses. I looked at Zora. She was staring at the screen, confused. She recognized the voices. She recognized the tone. But she did not understand what was coming next. She did not know that the next few minutes would erase her identity. I let the recording play. Once Isaiah is gone, we split everything 50-50, just like we planned 30 years ago. The murmurs started again. 30 years. I looked at Zora. Listen closely, sweetie, I thought. This part is for you. We gave him Zora. He raised my daughter, thinking she was his little princess. And all the while she has my blood in her veins. Zora let out a sound that was half scream, half gasp. She stumbled back, grabbing a chair for support. She looked at the screen, then at Corinne, then at Vance. The resemblance was undeniable. The nose, the chin, the eyes. It was all there, hidden in plain sight, masked by my own blind love. "No," Zora whispered. "No, that is not true. She knows Vance. She knows you are her real father. We told her on her 18th birthday." The room spun. Zora looked at me. Her eyes were wide, pleading. "I did not know," she mouthed. "I swear I did not know." But the recording continued. She laughs about him with us. I looked at her. I looked at the girl I taught to ride a bike. The girl I walked down the aisle. "You knew," I said, my voice breaking just a little. "You knew all along." Zora shook her head violently. "No, Dad. I mean, Isaiah. She could not even call me Dad anymore." The truth was out. Vance made a run for it. He abandoned all pretense of dignity. He shoved a waiter aside and bolted for the French doors. "Stop him," I commanded. Silas stepped out from the shadows near the patio. He blocked the door. He was older than Vance, but he was made of granite. Vance ran into him and bounced off. "Going somewhere, Doctor?" Silas asked. Vance backed away, looking for another exit, but the doors were locked. The security team had sealed the room. "We are all going to watch the end of the movie together," I said. On the screen, the lovers were discussing the final cocktail, the one that would stop my heart. Simple, clean. Corinne sank to the floor. She did not kneel like Brad. She just slid down the wall, her gold dress pooling around her like melted metal. She covered her face with her hands. It was over. The facade was gone. The perfect wife, the brilliant doctor, the loving daughter, the devoted son-in-law. They were all just monsters in expensive clothes. And I was the light that burned them. I turned off the projector. The room was silent. No one moved. No one breathed. I looked at my guests. They were horrified. They were disgusted. "I am sorry to ruin the party," I said, my voice tired now. "But I thought you should know who you are drinking with." I signaled to the back of the room. "Now, if you will excuse me, I have some trash to take out." The front doors opened. Police officers swarmed in. Blue uniforms, badges, guns. They did not come for me. They came for the family. The audio recording from the motel room faded into static, but the echo of Corinne's voice confessing the paternity secret still hung in the air like a poisonous fog. Zora was shaking her head violently, her hands gripping the back of a velvet chair so hard her knuckles were white. She looked like a cornered animal, wild-eyed and frantic. I stood center stage, the master of ceremonies for my own funeral turned execution. I looked at the girl I had raised, the girl I had carried on my shoulders at parades, the girl whose scraped knees I had bandaged. I looked for myself in her face. I looked for a trace of my spirit, my grit, my heart. I found nothing. I saw only Vance's weak chin and Corinne's vanity. "You are lying," Zora screamed, her voice shrill and breaking. "It is a fake recording, just like the video of Brad. You made it up because you are sick. You are trying to hurt us." She was still fighting, still trying to gaslight a room full of people who had just heard the undeniable truth. It was impressive in a twisted way. She had her mother's ability to deny reality even when it was staring her in the face. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. I had the ultimate weapon loaded in the projector. "I am not lying, Zora," I said softly. "And deep down you know it. You have known since you were 18. You and your mother and your dad love." She flinched at the name. I pointed the remote at the screen. "But just in case there is any doubt in anyone else's mind, just in case my business partners think I am vindictive without cause, let us look at the science." I pressed the button. The screen flashed white, blindingly bright in the dim room. A document appeared. It was not grainy footage or audio waves. It was a PDF. High resolution, crisp and clinical. It was a paternity test report from the Miller Chemical Analysis Lab, the same lab that analyzed the pills. Elias was thorough. He had taken hair samples from Zora's hairbrush and a used coffee cup Vance had discarded in the trash 3 days ago. The names at the top were clear. Putative father Dr. Richard Vance, child Zora Thorne. The camera zoomed in on the bottom line. The probability of paternity, 99.9999%. The number was projected 10 feet tall behind me. It loomed over the room like a monolith. The silence that followed was different from the silence after Brad's video. That had been shock at a crime. This was shock at a betrayal so deep it felt biblical. Zora stared at the number. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The denial died in her throat. The reality of her biology was written in black and white pixels. Impossible, she whispered. But it was a weak protest, a dying breath. I looked at Corinne. She was still on the floor, but she had looked up. She was staring at the screen with a look of pure defeat. She did not deny it. She could not. The game was up. And Vance, the great doctor, the man of science. He was sweating profusely now, rivulets running down his tanned forehead. He looked at the screen and he saw his career, his reputation, and his freedom evaporating. He made a move, a desperate, cowardly move. He lunged for the side door, the one that led to the servants' hallway. He thought maybe the security team had missed it. He scrambled over a chair, knocking it aside, his tuxedo jacket flapping. I did not even turn around. I just watched. Vance grabbed the handle and yanked. Locked. He slammed his shoulder against the wood. It did not budge. Silas had been thorough. "Let me out!" Vance screamed, pounding on the door. "This is kidnapping. I am a doctor. You cannot keep me here." I laughed. It was a cold sound devoid of humor. "You are not a doctor tonight, Vance," I said. "Tonight you are just a sperm donor and a co-conspirator. And you are going nowhere." Vance slumped against the door, panting. He looked at Zora. He looked at his biological daughter, the fruit of his betrayal. There was no love in his eyes. Only panic. I turned my attention back to Zora. She was trembling violently now. The tears were real, but they were tears of loss. Not for me, but for the lifestyle I provided. "Daddy," she whimpered, reverting to the little girl voice she used when she wanted a new car or a vacation. "Please, this is a mistake. I am your daughter, in your heart. Does that not matter?" I walked towards her. The crowd parted. I stopped 3 feet away, close enough to smell her expensive perfume. 30 years, Zora. I said, my voice low and rough like gravel. 30 years. I woke up every day and worked myself to the bone to give you the life I never had. I paid for the private schools where you learned to look down on people like me. I paid for the pony you rode once and got bored of. I paid for that wedding dress you wore when you married a gambler. I took a step closer. I loved you, Zora. I loved you more than I loved my own pride. When you failed out of college, I bought your way back in. When you crashed your car drunk, I paid off the other driver. I cleaned up every mess you ever made. She was sobbing now, shaking her head. "And how did you repay me?" I asked. "Did you love me back? Did you respect me?" I pulled out my phone. I unlocked it and held up the screen showing the text thread I had photographed from her phone. "He is loaded, Daddy. Once we put him away, we are going to be set for life." I read the words aloud. My voice echoed in the silent ballroom. "You called me him. You called me the old fool. You conspired with your biological father to lock me in a cage and drug me into oblivion." I lowered the phone. "You did not see a father, Zora. You saw an ATM machine with a pulse. You saw an obstacle. You sold me out. You sold 30 years of love for designer bags and a G-Wagon. I did not mean it." She wailed. I was scared. Brad needed money. Brad needed money because he is a fool. I snapped. "But you, Zora, you are not a fool. You are cruel. That is worse." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document. It was the new will I had drafted at 3 a.m. "You want to know about your inheritance?" I asked, holding the paper up. "You want to know what you get?" Her eyes tracked the paper. Hope flared in them. A desperate, pathetic hope. "Here it is," I said. I ripped the paper in half, then in quarters. The sound of tearing paper was loud in the room. "Zora Thorne," I said, my voice booming. "You are not my daughter. You never were. You are the daughter of a liar and a cheat. And as of this moment, you are a stranger to me." I threw the confetti of paper into the air. It rained down around us like snow. "You get nothing," I said. "Not the house, not the trust fund, not a single red cent. I have dissolved your trust. I have removed you from the insurance policies. You are on your own, Zora. For the first time in your life, you are going to have to work for a living." Zora stared at the paper scraps on the floor. Her face went slack. Her future, her entire identity had just been shredded. "No," she whispered. You cannot do this. It is done, I said, turning my back on her. The reality hit her then. The money was gone. The protection was gone. She was married to a bankrupt gambler, her mother was the exposed adulteress, and her biological father was a murderer. She had nothing, and she needed someone to blame. She did not blame herself, people like Zora never do. She looked at me walking away, then she looked at Brad sobbing on the floor, and then her eyes landed on Vance. Vance was still huddled by the door, trying to make himself invisible. Zora's face twisted. A mask of pure, ugly rage replaced the sobbing victim. She screamed, a primal sound of frustration. You, she shrieked, pointing at Vance. She marched across the room, her heels clicking on the parquet floor like gunshots. Vance looked up, eyes widening. Zora, wait. Honey, do not call me that, she yelled. She reached him and she did not hesitate. She hauled off and slapped him. It was a vicious blow. The sound of her palm hitting his face echoed off the vaulted ceiling. Vance stumbled back, holding his cheek. Zora, stop. You ruined everything, she screamed, hitting him again. You and Mom, you filled my head with this poison. You told me he was stupid. You told me we deserved it. You promised me millions. She was clawing at him now, tearing at his tuxedo. The veneer of the socialite was gone, replaced by a street fighter fighting for survival. You made me do it, she yelled. I had a father. Isaiah was my father. He loved me. And you took that away. You made me hate him. You made me greedy. It was a lie, of course. She was greedy on her own. But it was easier to blame the man who had promised her the world and delivered nothing but ash. Get off me, Vance shouted, pushing her away. You spoiled brat. You were happy enough to take the money when it was flowing. Do not act like a saint now. He shoved her and she fell back into a table of hors d'oeuvres, crashing into a display of shrimp cocktail. Cocktail sauce splattered over her white dress like blood. Zora scrambled up, grabbing a handful of shrimp and throwing it at him. I hate you, she screamed. I wish you were dead. It was chaos. The family was eating itself alive. The facade of unity, the picture-perfect image they had presented to the world, was dissolving into violence and accusations. Corinne was still on the floor watching them, her eyes vacant. Brad was curled in a ball, rocking back and forth. Zora and Vance were fighting like animals. My guests were watching in horrified fascination. Phones were recording. This was not just a scandal. It was a demolition. I stood in the center of the storm, calm and untouched. I watched them tear each other apart. This was justice. This was the raw, ugly truth exposed for everyone to see. I signaled to the security team. Separate them, I said, but do not let them leave. We have one more scene to play. The guards moved in, pulling Zora off Vance. She was kicking and screaming, covered in sauce and cocktail shrimp. Vance was bleeding from a scratch on his cheek, his tie ripped. They dragged them to opposite sides of the room. I looked at Corinne. She was the architect. She was the one who started it all 30 years ago. I walked over to her. She looked up at me. Her makeup was running. She looked old. Get up, Corinne, I said. She shook her head. Isaiah, please. Get up, I commanded. We have one more video, and this one is just for you. I pointed the remote at the screen again, the final nail in the coffin. I pressed the button. The screen flickered one last time, illuminating the horrified faces of the city's elite. The image was stable now, the audio crystal clear. It was the same motel room, but a different angle. Corinne was sitting on the edge of the bed, Vance pacing in front of her. We accelerate. Vance's voice boomed through the speakers. No more waiting. Tomorrow we take him to the facility. We check him in under an alias. We keep him sedated. Corinne on the screen nodded eagerly. And then we up the dosage, Vance said, making a chopping motion with his hand. One final cocktail. A massive dose of the benzo mixed with the scopolamine. His liver is already weak. It will shut down within hours. Hepatic failure. He goes to sleep and never wakes up. Simple. Clean. The air in the ballroom was sucked out. This was not fraud. This was not adultery. This was a conspiracy to commit capital murder. Corinne let out a low, animalistic moan. She tried to scramble up from the floor, her gold dress tearing under her heel, but her legs gave out. She looked at the screen, watching her own lips seal her fate. After that, we are free, my love. The recording continued. We take the money. We take the properties. I paused the video. The freeze frame showed Corinne smiling a smile of pure malice. I looked down at her. Simple, I repeated. Clean. Is that how you described 40 years of marriage, Corinne? Just a mess you needed to clean up so you could cash out. She looked up at me, her mascara running in black streaks down her face. She looked like a melting wax figure. Isaiah, she whispered. It was just talk. We were just venting. We never meant to do it. Just talk, I said. I signaled to Silas, who was standing by the kitchen door. Bring her in. The door swung open. Tasha walked in. She was flanked by 2 large security guards, but she walked under her own power. She looked small and terrified, but she held her head up. She was clutching the envelope I had given her. Corinne gasped. She recognized the nurse instantly, the loose end she thought she had tied up. Vance, who had been nursing his bloody lip in the corner, went pale. No, he breathed. No. Tasha walked to the center of the room. She stopped in front of the police officers who had entered earlier. Officer, I said, this is Tasha Miller. She was the surgical nurse present during my procedure on Tuesday, and she has something she wants to say. The lead detective, a grim-faced man named Detective Miller, stepped forward. Ms. Miller, he asked, do you have a statement? Tasha nodded. Her voice was shaking, but it carried to the back of the room. Dr. Vance gave me a packet of pills, she said, pointing a trembling finger at the doctor. He told me they were vitamins, but then he told me to double the dose. He told me to make sure Mr. Thorne took them every morning. He said if I did not do it, he would have my license revoked. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small plastic bag. I saved one, she said. I was scared. I did not give him the full dose today. I saved one just in case. She handed the bag to the detective. Inside was the blue pill, the lethal dose. Elias. My chemist stepped forward from the crowd of guests. He was wearing a suit that was too big for him, but he looked authoritative. Officer, Elias said, holding up a file folder. I ran a spectrographic analysis on that pill this morning. It is a lethal compound. If Mr. Thorne had taken the full regimen with his liver condition, he would be dead by sunrise. The detective took the folder. He looked at Vance. Dr. Richard Vance, he said, pulling a pair of handcuffs from his belt. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and medical malpractice. Vance panicked. He lunged at Tasha, his hands clawing for her throat. You lying witch, he screamed. You are in on it. Silas moved like a blur. He intercepted Vance, sweeping his legs out from under him. Vance hit the floor hard. The detective was on him in a second knee in his back, cuffing his hands behind him. I looked at Corinne. She was alone, isolated on the Persian rug, surrounded by the wreckage of her schemes. She looked at me pleadingly. Isaiah, please, I am your wife. I took care of you. You took care of me. I laughed, a harsh sound that hurt my throat. You poisoned me, Corinne. You fed me death with a spoon and called it love. But I did it for us, she stammered, losing her mind. For the family. Zora needed... Do not speak her name, I snapped. You used that girl as a weapon against me for 30 years. I walked closer to her, leaning down so our faces were inches apart. Do you want to know the real tragedy, Corinne? She stared at me, eyes wide with terror. I knew, I whispered. She blinked. What? I knew about the affair, I said. I knew 20 years ago. I saw you. Her mouth opened in shock. I was inspecting a site downtown. The old Meridian Hotel. I saw you and Vance in the lobby. You were kissing. You looked happy. Happier than you ever looked with me. I straightened up, looking down at her with pity. I almost divorced you then. I had the papers drawn up. I was going to throw you out on the street. Why didn't you? She breathed. Because of Zora, I said. She was 8 years old. She was innocent. She looked at me like I hung the moon. If I divorced you, I would have lost her. The courts would have given her to you. And I knew you would destroy her. I knew you would turn her into a vanity project. I stayed silent for 20 years, Corinne. I swallowed my pride. I slept in a cold bed. I let you spend my money. I let you play the devoted wife. All for her. All so she could have a father. I looked over at Zora, who was sobbing in the corner, guarded by a police officer. And look what you did to her anyway. You poisoned her too. You turned her into a copy of yourself. Greedy, vain, empty. Corinne began to weep. Not the fake, delicate tears she used to manipulate me. Ugly, guttural sobs of ruin. I gave you everything. I said, my voice rising to fill the room. I gave you a life most people only dream of. I gave you loyalty. I gave you a home. And in return, you plotted to kill me in a cheap motel room. I looked at the detective. Take her. The detective nodded to a female officer. She stepped forward and pulled Corinne to her feet. She spun her around and snapped the handcuffs on her wrists. The click was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. "Corinne Thorne," the officer recited. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and elder abuse. You have the right to remain silent." Corinne looked at me one last time as they dragged her towards the door. Her eyes were dead. The fire of greed had finally burned out, leaving only ash. "Isaiah," she whispered, "what will happen to me?" I fixed my cuffs. I smoothed my tie. "I do not know, Corinne," I said, turning my back on her. "And frankly, my dear, I do not give a damn." The police led them out. Vance was shouting legal threats. Corinne was limp, a broken doll. Brad was still on the floor moaning about his debt. Zora was being escorted out separately, screaming that she was a victim. The party guests stood in stunned silence. The champagne had gone warm. The lobster was untouched. I stood alone in the center of the room. The projector screen was blank now, a white canvas. I looked at my hands. They were steady. The tremors were gone. I had done it. I had burned the kingdom down. And from the ashes, I was finally free. The chaos in the ballroom had settled into a grim tableau of justice. The police officers were efficient, professional, moving with the practiced ease of men and women who had seen the worst of humanity and were not impressed by tuxedos or tears. Brad was on his knees, his hands cuffed behind his back. His shiny suit ruined his face, a mask of snot and tears. He looked at me not with the arrogance he had shown at the dinner table, but with the pathetic desperation of a man watching the guillotine blade fall. "Isaiah, please," he blubbered, trying to shuffle towards me on his knees. "You cannot let them take me. I will be killed in prison. You know I am soft. I am not like you. I cannot survive in there." I looked down at him. He was right. He was soft. He was a marshmallow in a world of steel. "You should have thought about that before you tried to pawn my car, Brad," I said, my voice devoid of pity. "You should have thought about that before you sat on my balcony and sold my life to a loan shark for pennies on the dollar." But the debt, he wheezed. "You bought the debt. You own me, Isaiah. Just let me work it off. I will do anything. I will mow your lawn. I will wash your cars. I will be your servant. Just do not send me to jail." I shook my head slowly. "I do not need a servant, Brad. I have people for that. Honest people. People who do not try to poison me. And as for the debt, consider it a long-term investment. I am going to hold on to that note. And every time you make $1 in the commissary, every time you think you see a light at the end of the tunnel, my lawyers will be there to garnish it. You will never be free of me." Brad let out a wail that sounded like a dying animal. An officer hauled him to his feet, indifferent to his suffering. Then there was Zora. She was standing near the door, flanked by a female officer. Her makeup was ruined, her dress stained with cocktail sauce, her hair a bird's nest of tangles. She looked at me, and for a second I saw the little girl I had adopted, the 5-year-old with the missing tooth and the big dreams. But then she spoke, and the illusion shattered. "Daddy," she sobbed, using the word like a weapon. "Daddy, please, look at me. I am your little girl. You cannot let them take me. I am scared." She held out her hands, the handcuffs glinting under the chandelier lights. "I did not know they were going to kill you," she lied. Her eyes were wide, pleading. "I just wanted the money." "I admit it. I was greedy. But I am not a murderer. I am your daughter. Doesn't that mean anything?" I walked over to her. I stopped just out of reach. I looked at her, really looked at her, searching for any sign of genuine remorse. But all I saw was fear for herself. She was not sorry she had hurt me. She was sorry she had been caught. "It means everything, Zora," I said softly. "Being a father meant everything to me. It meant late nights helping you with homework. It meant cheering for you at recitals. It meant loving you even when you were unlovable." I took a breath, steeling myself against the pain in my chest. "But being a daughter means something too. It means loyalty. It means respect. And you traded me for a G-Wagon. You laughed about my dementia. You called me a fool." "But I love you," she screamed, desperate now. "No," I said. "You love what I can do for you. You love the access. You love the name Thorne. Well, I am taking it back." I turned to the officer holding her arm. "She is not a Thorne," I said. "Her name is Vance. Make sure the booking sheet reflects that." Zora's face crumpled. "No, you cannot. That is my name." "Not anymore," I said, turning my back on her. I walked back to the center of the room. The guests were watching in stunned silence. The champagne flutes were abandoned on tables. The hors d'oeuvres were growing cold. They had come for a retirement party and they had witnessed a Greek tragedy. I saw my business partner's men who had been with me since the beginning. I saw the mayor looking pale and shaken. I saw my old foreman Mike nodding at me with grim approval. I needed to finish this. I needed to burn the last bridge. I picked up the microphone one last time. My friends, I said, my voice echoing through the grand hall, I am sorry you had to see this. It is an ugly business cleaning out the rot. But it was necessary. I looked at Corinne, who was being led out the door, her head hung low. I looked at Vance, who was glaring at me with hatred. I looked at Brad and Zora, broken and weeping. They did this for money, I said, gesturing to the opulent room around us. They poisoned me, lied to me, and betrayed me because they wanted this house. They wanted the accounts. They wanted the empire. I paused, letting my gaze sweep over the gilded mirrors and the silk drapes. They thought the money was the prize. They thought if they just got rid of the old man, they would be kings and queens. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a folded document. It was the deed to the estate. The deed to this house, the land, everything. Well, I have news for them, and I have news for you. I held the document up. You cannot build a home on a foundation of lies, and you cannot enjoy wealth that is stained with blood. I looked directly at the camera that was still streaming to the projector, ensuring my face was 10 feet tall on the screen behind me. As of this morning, I continued, I have liquidated my entire portfolio, the stocks, the bonds, the offshore accounts, all of it. A murmur went through the crowd. Billions of dollars. Gone. And this house, I asked, looking around. This beautiful, cursed house, I have donated it, Zora screamed from the doorway. No, you cannot. It is my inheritance. It is not your inheritance, I said, cold as ice. It is a donation to the City Foundation for the Forgotten Elderly. I looked at the mayor. Mr. Mayor, tomorrow morning this mansion becomes a shelter, a home for seniors who have been abandoned by their families, a place for people who have no one to protect them. It will be a sanctuary for the very people my wife and doctor tried to victimize. The mayor's jaw dropped. He looked around the room, seeing the potential, seeing the headlines. And the money, I continued. The millions my family was willing to kill for, I have established a trust. Every cent will go to funding legal defense for victims of elder abuse. We are going to hire the best lawyers, the toughest investigators, and we are going to hunt down every greedy child and every abusive caregiver in this state. I looked at Brad. I looked at Vance. You wanted my money to pay your debts? Well, my money is going to pay to put people like you in prison. The crowd erupted. Not in polite applause, but in a roar of shock and approval. Mike the foreman started clapping his big hands, making a thunderous sound. Then the others joined in. I raised my hand for silence. I kept one thing I said. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a set of keys. Simple brass keys. I kept the cottage. The little 2-bedroom house in the suburbs where I lived with my first wife Sarah before I made my first million. The house where I was actually happy. I looked at Corinne, who had stopped at the door listening. You loved my money more than my life, Corinne, I said. So watch the money disappear. Watch it do good in the world while you rot in a cell. I tore the deed in half. It was symbolic, of course the lawyers had the real papers, but it felt good. Get them out of here, I ordered the police. The officers moved. They dragged the screaming, crying, cursing remnants of my family out the front door. I watched them go. I watched the heavy oak doors slam shut behind them, sealing their fate. The siren lights flashed through the windows, painting the room in strokes of red and blue. The guests began to filter out. They came up to me one by one, shaking my hand, mumbling apologies, offering support. Isaiah, you are a brave man, the mayor said. Mr. Thorne, if you need anything, Mike said, gripping my shoulder. I nodded, thanking them, but I wanted them gone. I wanted the noise to stop. Slowly, the room emptied. The caterers packed up the untouched food. The security team swept the perimeter. Silas came up to me. It is done, Isaiah, he said quietly. They are in custody. The DA is already drafting the charges. It is a slam dunk. Thank you, Silas, I said. Go home. Get some rest. Are you sure you do not want me to stay? No, I said. I need a minute, just a minute. Silas nodded and left, closing the side door behind him. I was alone. I stood in the center of the grand salon. It was empty now. The chairs were overturned. The screen was blank. The floor was stained with wine and shrimp cocktail sauce. It looked like a battlefield, and I was the last man standing. I looked at the crystal chandelier. It was beautiful. It cost $50,000. It was just glass and light. I walked over to the table where Brad had poured my wine. The fern was wilting from the alcohol I had poured into it. I picked up the bottle of Cabernet. I poured a glass. My liver was fine. That was another lie I had let them believe. My liver was strong as an ox. I just didn't drink because I liked to keep a clear head. But tonight I deserved a drink. I raised the glass to the empty room, to the ghosts of the family I thought I had. To Sarah I whispered, "You were the only one who loved me for me." I took a sip. It was rich and complex tasting of dark fruit and oak. I looked around the mansion one last time. I did not feel loss. I did not feel regret. I felt lighter. I had cut the cancer out. It had been painful. It had been bloody, but I was clean. I walked to the front door, my footsteps echoing on the marble. I opened it and stepped out into the night air. It was cool and crisp. I did not look back. I walked down the driveway, past the fountain, past the manicured hedges. I walked to the gate where a taxi was waiting. Not a limo, a taxi. "Where to, pal?" the driver asked. "Take me to 42 Cedar Street," I said. "The little house with the blue door." I got in. I was 75 years old. I had no wife. I had no children. I had given away my fortune. But as the taxi pulled away, leaving the estate behind in the darkness, I realized something. I was richer than I had been in 30 years. I was free. 6 months later, the water of Lake Eola was glass smooth, reflecting the morning sky like a mirror. I sat on a folding canvas chair, my hands wrapped around a thermos of black coffee, a fishing line trailing lazily into the water. There was no yacht, there was no crew catering to my whims, just me, a $75 rod, and the silence. It was the loudest silence I had ever heard. For 40 years, silence was something I tried to fill. I filled it with construction noise, with shouting foremen, with the ringing of telephones. Then I filled it with the clinking of crystal glasses and the insincere laughter of people who wanted my money. Now the silence was just peace. I lived in the cottage on Cedar Street now. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, a porch that needed painting. It was the house I bought with Sarah back in '72. I had rented it out for decades, never having the heart to sell it. Moving back in felt like putting on an old, comfortable coat. The floorboards creaked in familiar places. The light hit the kitchen table at the exact same angle it did 50 years ago. I did not have a staff. I cooked my own eggs. I washed my own dishes. I mowed my own lawn. My back ached at the end of the day, but it was a good ache, an honest ache. The news vans had stopped parking outside my driveway about 3 months ago. The trial of the century, they called it. The tycoon who took down his own family. It was front-page news for weeks. But the news cycle moves fast. Now, I was just an old man fishing on a Tuesday morning. I reeled in the line, checking the bait. A worm. Simple. Honest. Beside me on the grass lay a white envelope. It had arrived yesterday. The return address was stamped in red ink, State Correctional Facility for Women. The handwriting was neat, familiar, and desperate. Corinne. I had carried it around in my pocket all day. It felt heavy like a stone. I knew what was inside. Pages of excuses, tear-stained pleas for forgiveness, claims that she had found God, that she was a changed woman, that the prison chaplain had shown her the light. She wanted me to visit. She wanted money for the commissary. She wanted to know if I still thought about her. I picked up the envelope. The paper felt cheap and rough. I did think about her. I thought about her every time I woke up without grogginess, my mind sharp and clear. I thought about her every time I looked at my bank account, which was now modest but secure, and felt zero anxiety about who was stealing from it. I thought about her the way a survivor thinks about a tumor that has been successfully removed. You remember the pain, but you do not miss the sickness. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my lighter. It was a Zippo, scratched and worn. I did not open the letter. I did not need to read her lies. I knew her truth. I had heard it in a motel room on a recording that sent her to prison for 20 years. I flicked the lighter. The flame danced in the gentle breeze. I held the corner of the envelope to the fire. It caught quickly. The cheap paper curled and blackened. I watched the blue ink of her handwriting turn to ash. I watched the stamp burn. I watched the past disintegrate. I dropped the burning paper onto the gravel path and watched it until the last ember died out. Then I crushed the ashes with the heel of my boot. Goodbye, Corinne. I turned back to the water. A ripple broke the surface. A fish nibbling. I let it go. I wasn't really here to catch anything. I was here to be. Excuse me. A voice behind me. Soft, hesitant. I turned around. A woman was standing on the path. She was about my age, maybe a few years younger. She had silver hair tied back in a loose bun, and she was wearing a simple floral dress with a cardigan. She held a leash attached to a golden retriever that was wagging its tail at me. I recognized her. She owned the bakery down on Main Street, the one where I bought my sourdough bread every Tuesday. I hope I am not disturbing you, she said, smiling. Her eyes crinkled at the corners. Genuine lines. Not Botox, not at all, I said, standing up. My knees popped, but I didn't wince. I was just feeding the fish my bait. They seem to be smart today. She laughed. It was a warm sound, like fresh bread coming out of the oven. I am Clara, she said, extending a hand. I see you in the shop sometimes. You always buy the day-old loaf. I took her hand. It was warm and dusted with a little bit of flour. I like to make bread pudding. I lied. Actually, I bought the day-old loaf because I liked the texture, but mostly because I liked that she never tried to upsell me on the expensive pastries. I am Isaiah, I said. I know, she said. I tensed. Did she know Isaiah Thorne, the tycoon? Did she know the scandal? Was she going to ask me about the trial? She pointed to the thermos. You left this on the counter yesterday. I saw you walking down here and thought I would bring it to you. She reached into her tote bag and pulled out my other thermos, the red one I used for soup. I blinked. I had forgotten it. You walked all the way down here just to return a thermos? I asked. It is a nice thermos. She shrugged, and I needed to walk Buster. She looked at me. There was no recognition of my wealth in her eyes, no calculation, no greed. She just saw an old man who forgot his soup container. Thank you, I said, taking it. That was very kind of you. She hesitated. I also brought some cookies. Ginger snaps. They came out a little burnt on the edges so I could not sell them. I hate wasting food. Would you like one? She held out a small paper bag. I looked at the bag. 6 months ago, if someone offered me food, I would have suspected poison. I would have looked for the angle. But looking at Clara with her flour-dusted hands and her happy dog, I realized the war was over. I would love one, I said. She sat down on the grass next to my chair. She did not ask if I was rich. She did not ask if I was lonely. She just broke a cookie in half and gave me the bigger piece. We sat there for an hour, eating burnt ginger snaps and drinking coffee. We talked about the weather. We talked about dogs. She told me about her grandson who was learning to play the trumpet. I told her about the cottage and how I was thinking of planting tomatoes. I did not tell her I used to own the skyline. I did not tell her I sent my family to prison. I told her I used to work in construction, which was true. You have sad eyes, Isaiah, she said quietly, looking out at the water. I have seen some things, I admitted. We all have, she said. My husband passed 10 years ago. He was a good man, but he was stubborn. He refused to go to the doctor until it was too late. I miss him every day, but I do not miss the stubbornness. I nodded. I miss the idea of family, I said. But I am learning that sometimes the idea is better than the reality. She looked at me, and I felt seen, truly seen. Family is who you break bread with, Isaiah, she said. It is not who shares your blood. It is who shares your time. She stood up, dusting crumbs from her dress. I have to get back to the shop. The lunch rush starts at noon. She clipped the leash back onto Buster's collar. Will I see you next Tuesday? She asked. I will save the day-old loaf for you. I stood up. Actually, Clara, I said, I was thinking maybe I could buy a fresh loaf next time. Maybe even a pie. She smiled. A real smile. I would like that, she said. She walked away up the path. I watched her go. I looked at the ashes on the ground where Corinne's letter had burned. The wind had already scattered them. They were gone. I looked at the thermos Clara had returned. I sat back down in my chair. I cast my line back into the water. I was Isaiah Thorne. I lived in a small cottage. I drove a 10-year-old truck. I had no millions in the bank anymore. But as I sat there tasting the ginger and sugar on my tongue, I knew the truth. I had survived the cut. I had survived the poison. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't building a fortress to keep people out. I was building a life to let people in. I reeled in the line. I think I will plant those tomatoes. We spend our lives chasing wealth thinking it will protect us, but money often attracts the very predators we fear most. The people who truly love you do not care about your bank account. They care about your heart. Real power is not about controlling others or accumulating assets. It is about having the courage to cut toxicity out of your life, even if it shares your last name. You can build an empire of steel and glass, but if the foundation is built on lies, it will crumble. The only true legacy we leave behind is the truth we lived and the dignity we kept when the world tried to strip it away. This story serves as a stark reminder that the title of family is earned through loyalty and respect, not merely granted by blood or marriage. We often cling to toxic relationships out of a misplaced sense of duty. But Isaiah's journey proves that true liberation only comes when we stop funding our own destruction. Greed has the terrifying power to hollow out human connection, leaving behind only manipulation and cruelty. It teaches us that our greatest asset is never our wealth, but our dignity and self-worth. No matter your age, you have the absolute right to demand honesty, and sometimes the bravest thing you can do is burn the bridge to a toxic past to finally build a peaceful future. If Isaiah's victory inspired you to stand up for your own worth, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more stories of justice, and share this video with someone who needs to see it.